So I am going to call this meeting of the Public Site and Building Commission to order at 7:13. Finally. Manfreda had a flag. I don't have a flag, so we're not going to be disrespectful and salute nothing. So we can imagine that we've done the salute because it's important, or the pledge because it's important. And the agenda, in our haste, we kind of forgot to put on public input. So I'm going to make a motion that we add that, because that's usually the first thing. So I make a motion that we add public input. Since this is a regular meeting, we're allowed to do that. So I need a second.
I second, yes.
Got a couple of seconds, Dave, and John Menti. And some people are muted, some people are unmuted. We can leave it like this for now. If I start getting some feedback, I might have to mute everybody and you'll have to unmute yourself to jump in. So then I'm going to ask for a vote. So we're adding public input. All in favor, if you want to raise your hands, and if you've got to talk, then
Aye. Aye.
aye, everybody, aye.
Aye.
No, Perna, Roy, and I still can't hear Gil. So that passes, and so I will call for public input, which I don't see anybody from the public right now. All of the public people that were on a little earlier, I think, jumped off and went on to Board of Finance, because that's where it's at tonight, Board of Finance. So I'm glad we put that in. We'll have to remember to use it in future meetings, especially regular meetings. And then correspondence, I don't have anything, and I don't think Kathy's received anything that's not part of the documents that were either put up already. We can't really add much more in if it's not been posted. We might have things that we have to refer to, but we can't add any correspondence in right now. So then we have to do approval of meeting minutes from our special meeting of March 31st. So I'll make a motion that we approve the regular or the special meeting minutes. Actually, that's a correction that needs to be made. So special meeting minutes from Tuesday, March 31, 2020. And I need a second on that.
Second.
That was Dave Olson, second. Is there any other than, it needs to say special meeting, I think, right? Kathy?
It says special meeting, doesn't it say? Or does it not?
The minutes.
Minutes, okay.
Yeah, the minutes say regular meeting, so just
All right.
take that. And then everybody's got a chance to read it. Does anybody have anything in the minutes that need to be updated, changed, corrected, etc.? All good?
Nope.
So we'll vote on that. All in favor of accepting the minutes for the special meeting of March 31, 2020? Aye. Everybody, Dino, you're good?
Aye.
Everybody's good. All right. So the, oh wait, two people have to abstain, I think. Yeah, Dave and Dave. Well, I'm not sure if you had, Dave Horvath wasn't there. Dave Olson, we couldn't hear you. And I don't know if you were there or if we lost you partway through.
Yeah. I would say I wasn't there.
Okay, that's
We
okay.
tried and it didn't work.
Yeah, I know. I saw you at the beginning and then you disappeared, but here we are. We're getting this. Okay, so so everybody is in favor and Dave are abstaining. I know John and Gil were on in the beginning and lost their audio at some point, but they were there.
Yeah, the whole meeting, right.
Yep. So on to old business. Rockwell and Johnson schools. Are we going to start with the schedule, Geraldine, or how are we going to jump into this?
We are, we're going to start with the schedule, and I'm going to ask, I think Jim or Ken, to first update us on the global schedule changes that we're seeing based on schools not being back in session until, well, the earliest, May 20th. And then we'll move to Ken's regular report on what the current work is in progress at each of the schools. So Jim or Ken?
Sure. So we have a new date now of May 20th. We had already been pretty well taking advantage of getting areas based on the old date. The May 20th date doesn't really add too many more opportunities for that. You know, again, what we're taking a look at now is what kind of time we would need to allow for us to get it back in shape for students. Right now, it's based on what we're seeing, it's about 2 weeks' time for us to be able to do that. So it's, you know, we've been able to get everybody through inspections done, cleaned out, that type of thing. As far as the new date of May 20th, what we're doing now is putting together a schedule based on that they would be back on May 20th and then out again mid-June. So it doesn't really give us a lot of flexibility there. Obviously, it would be better for the project if the schools were closed, but that's where we're at right now. It's a bigger issue at Johnson because of all of that first floor work that has to take place that would be beneficial to the project if we were able to resequence that and get in there now. It's a little bit more straightforward at Rockwell, you know, the way it is laid out now with the May 20th date. And with that, I'll let Ken walk you through what we've been up to recently and what we've gotten into.
All right, starting at Johnson, we're continuing the CMU at the gym. We're getting ready to start brick. We're installing the roof on the existing classroom portion, and they're moving along pretty good. They've got about a third of it finished. The electrical rough for the masonry is ongoing. They're pulling feeders in the CAF and music room. There's the teacher parking lot sub-basin process is ongoing. The demolition in the kitchen is getting pretty close to completed. They've got all the concrete removed from the flooring, all the walls. So we're getting ready to do the under slab utilities. The cafeteria has also had quite a bit of demolition that has started in there, all the new window openings to the corridor. And we're getting ready to do the window openings to the exterior of the building in the cafeteria. The roof drains and frames have been ongoing for the plumber on the existing classroom. And we've got for work that's starting the brick. I mentioned the brick work at the gym. Eversource has got it scheduled for the 28th of this month. We've got door frames coming in early May, and hoping to start windows in a few days. And, oh, sure. The Rockwell School, if there's no questions. So for the work in progress, we've got the curb and walkway at the bus loop. They're doing some of that as the areas are cleaned out. Right now, they've got it pretty much processed, and it's a good road coming in now. The demolition in the gym, we've got the abatement done, so now they're getting in there, and they're gonna do some containment, because that, again, is the PCB block that we have to take out of the gym. We have started some of the, it's down lower, but the roof drains and piping have started in the gym as well. The new roof drains and piping. The second floor, we were doing startup and controls, and they're showing 95%. They really just have a few boards that are coming in for the split systems and a couple of the FCUs, and then they'll be able to be at 100%. The demo for the garden wing is ongoing, and they've got the two end classrooms by the portables. Those were the bigger kindergarten rooms. Those are demoed right now, and they're now doing the 4 other rooms. So they're going along pretty good. They'll probably be done by the end of this week. The switch gear is being installed into the new electrical room. The kitchen is under containment right now because of the PCB block, but all of the equipment, overhead mechanicals and everything like that has been removed, or at least it's dropped on the ground right now, and they're in the process of removing everything with the demolition of the walls and in that space. Phase 2 roofing, we just dropped down to do the kindergarten roof. They stripped and removed that roof today, and they'll be putting the new roof on that tomorrow. The exterior of the building, the wall panel company is doing the girts for the wall panels. And so we have for work to be started, the roof drains will be installed in the gym, and then we'll be looking to start the roof at the gym. We'll have some underground plumbing in the kindergarten wing, and we talked about some roofing that started today. And in the site, we're going to be connecting the generator, and we're looking at starting the grease trap that goes outside the kitchen in the driveway. And if there's no other questions, I do have an update for the COVID-19 shutdown. And
Ken, before you do that, I just wanted to jump in and let the commission know that regardless of whether the schools are reoccupied after May 20th, the district has turned over the kitchens, the cafeterias, in Johnson, some offices and the band room. Basically, what we're trying to preserve in case the school is reoccupied on May 20th is really just the classrooms, the administrative offices, and obviously any rooms that have been completed at this point. But all those auxiliary spaces have been turned over to the construction team to just kind of run with from now through the end of the summer.
That's helpful.
Go ahead, Ken.
okay, so for COVID-19 impacts, right now we have the kitchen equipment fabricators of the serving line. They have stopped production. What that means, we're not sure about, because they can't get us any information. So as soon as we find out, we'll let you know on that one. The marker boards have stopped production. Grease trap for Johnson has a 12-week lead time. So instead of getting here in late June, it's looking like early July. So we tried to see if we could get that pushed up, and we couldn't. We're experiencing some labor shortages with the masonry, concrete, roofing, drywall. All of these have had workers in quarantine. It's updated, and I'll be forwarded some letters that I'm getting from contractors on their crews and why they can't be on site. Some of the demolition restrictions are that we have to have smaller crews and smaller work areas. And then on the 9th of April, the state revised their guidelines for COVID-19 by limiting the work areas so that they're smaller, so that the trades don't mingle. 2-day cleaning of the portable toilets and the interior toilets, weekly cleaning of work areas, fresh air for interior spaces, second shift work where possible, and to continue to maintain the social distancing of 6 feet, including lunch and break time. And offsetting lunch and break time is also one of the guidelines. They want everyone to travel separately to and from work and within the work sites, and provide an adequate supply of PPE, including but not limited to masks, gloves, and hand sanitizers. So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with on the site on a daily basis. It's a little easier on some of the exterior work, but as we are inside for quite a bit of the demolition, we have to remind the contractors that it's not work as it usually is. They can't, bunch up and constantly be on top of each other. So it's ongoing. It's pretty much all I have.
PPE problem at all?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a PPE problem at all?
I think we do. It's, just the hand sanitizer and we tried to have the Porta-John company supply it. And what was happening is people were taking it, filling up their jugs or whatever, and who knows where it goes. It's, one of those things that it's hard to get a lot of this material.
So, Ken, are you, Rizzo, supplying protective equipment, or are they responsible for, each contractor or subcontractor responsible for supplying their own?
It's the contractors have to supply it for their people.
Okay. And are they doing that? Are they able to come up with stuff to supply for their people?
Yeah, we have people that are wearing masks, and most everybody, wearing gloves, and for the most part, yes.
And are you having any sort of, do you have, I know you sent out some information a couple weeks ago about sort of protocol. If they're not wearing masks or not doing whatever your protocol is, are you calling them on it or asking them to leave the job, or are you handling that?
Yeah, we'll talk to the project managers and we'll tell them what we're seeing out there and explain to them that the person they have in the field has to step it up and make sure that we don't see the mingling of the crews, or if they're taking lunch on top of each other, things like that. We're monitoring.
Okay. And are they responsive to, if you call them on it, they'll say they'll take care of it?
Yeah, I haven't seen any real problems with the people taking direction in the field.
Okay. And then are you documenting any of it if you see big issues, or is it just little things like don't forget to put your mask on after lunch or something like that?
The thing with, right now with the masks, I don't know that that's mandatory, so it's hard to tell them that they have to wear the masks. But we're doing a lot of demolition, so as a good note, the people doing the demolition are wearing the masks for, you know, the obvious dust and everything. But yeah, it's more of what we're seeing is sometimes people just have a tendency to, you know, work too close to one another, and, you know, we have to keep them separated.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions for Ken on his update and any other of the job site kinds of things?
So while we're still on schedule, we'll ask Rizzo to respond to the delay letter that the town received a copy of from Acoustics. And as I explained to Jim and Ken, that letter has been distributed to the building committee. And based on the fact that this contractor is now notifying the town that there might be delay in damages, we ought to have a response from Rizzo.
And we'll absolutely respond. And basically what this contractor is saying is the job cost him more than he thought it would cost him. So we'll respond to him. His comments about no communication have to do with that he felt he should be receiving a change order anytime there was a change in the phasing schedule. That's not correct. That's not the contract he signed. So we will respond to him, and we will copy you on our response to him.
And this has been ongoing for quite a while, is my understanding. It looks like pages and pages and pages.
Well, it all relates to the interior phasing of the job. It's, you had phases that were started and stopped and worked on over the summer. You had additional phases through the winter. That's what that all relates to.
Okay, and then are we going to see something out of this in the form of some sort of request for a change order or additional funds?
We're going to respond to him that he's not due anything. He's already cleared himself and signed his waivers for all of these time periods. So no, we'll respond to it, and we'll copy Geraldine on the response.
Does anybody else have any questions for Ken or Jim on this?
No, I'm okay. I appreciate that, Jim, with, you know, your comments.
Okay, so we'll look for your response then on this, and hopefully it'll be soon, as quickly as you can do that. So as far as the construction schedule update, is there anything else that anyone has? I'm first going to ask, I know Gil was having trouble getting in, and now he's in because I can see his phone on, but I don't think we can hear him. So Gil, if you're talking, we obviously can't, and I can't figure out a way to make your microphone come on. So you can try pressing *6. That's one thing that I know can be done when you're on the phone, to unmute yourself. But all I'm seeing is, I don't see a way to mute or unmute him.
Try Alt-8. Alt-A, excuse me, Alt-8.
But that's in the computer. He's on
Right.
a phone.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So *6 is what you usually have to do on a phone. On a computer, you can find your microphone and put it on. So we're not hearing Gil, but hopefully he'll keep working on trying to get in. So anything else on construction schedule update? I know Geraldine did also forward her monthly report, and I don't know if anybody had any questions on any of that before we move into the next section.
In terms of the overall project schedule, I think I would just like to report that that we do have movers who are going to be on site this week in order to empty all those spaces that the district has turned over to the construction team through May 20th. So we'll be moving some things out of the cafeterias, the stage areas, some of the offices that are being turned over. Bob had arranged for 2 Connex boxes to be relocated from the high school to the project site, so we're going to utilize those. And also possibly move some, like at Rockwell, store some things in the portables, whatever makes sense. We're trying to minimize touching things and moving twice. So if we can move items to their final location or to the Connex boxes, that works out a little bit better than having to move things in and out of the portables, but we'll be working on that this week.
Very good.
Okay, so we are in those spaces ahead of schedule as far as being able to get into those a little bit more quickly than we thought we could. However, as you reported and as Ken and Jim reported, we can't just have added at the whole entire building because we have to kind of pretend like school's going to come back into session, because it might.
So we're still sort of piecemeal in the, in different parts of the building. As I think Jim has said, it would be obviously make a lot more sense for the construction schedule and the construction sequencing if we could do everything at once, but we're still forced with holding off until, it'll probably, I think Christine has said it's likely to be similar to this last announcement from the Commissioner of Education and the Governor, sometime with a week or 10 days before May 20th. We assume that they'll be reassessing, and if they're going to make a change, it would be made at that time.
Okay, so we're kind of getting a little jump, but a cautious jump and a kind of small jump.
Correct.
Okay.
Nancy, this is Gil. Can you hear me?
Oh, yay, Gil is here. Okay, so
All
hey,
right.
yay, you figured it out. So
All right.
you were listening, and I didn't know whether you had any questions to what you heard with all the construction update, schedule update, and et cetera.
No, I did hear. I was somewhat surprised that the workers weren't, stricter in their requirements, but I guess that's to be expected.
Well, and I think that Rizzo's keeping on top of them as best they can to make sure they follow protocol. And I think their own companies are probably insisting that too, because they, they've got to keep work going and they don't want to have a reputation getting around that they're not being safe. I mean,
That's correct.
construction continues to be, sort of essential and allowed to be continued. But, if a lot of people aren't following guidelines, that could become problematic, not just in a small situation, but in larger construction projects too.
Exactly. Could affect the timetable of the completion.
Right. Okay, so Geraldine, are you ready to go into the budget next?
Yes, so we'll review the budget. This is, we'll start with Johnson. What I've got up on the screen is the main things to review, obviously, are the construction contingency balances. You should see that in the center of the screen. This budget has been updated after all of the invoice approvals that were made at the last building committee meeting. So you'll see that on the owner's side, we are on Johnson, there is still a little over, well, almost 1.6, a little over 1.5 remaining in the owner's contingency, and also 114,000 left in the environmental contingency for Johnson. In addition to that, we're a little bit above that in the GMP contract amount. You'll see that there is also a CM contingency balance of $540,000. That fluctuates as obviously as we assign PCOs back to the construction manager, but that's the current balance.
So with the, at least on Johnson, we're looking at the environmental contingency, which is getting down there. If we spend all that, but still have some environmental things to handle, that'll have to come out of our project contingency.
That's correct, and that's probably not as big of an issue at Johnson as it is at Rockwell, where the construction of the environmental contingency is currently at about $35,000. And we know right now that there are additional abatement costs for the gym based on the work that they just did. We are anticipating the additional abatement costs of the PCB overspray and ductwork that has not yet been removed. And obviously we have ongoing monitoring costs from Enviromed that we're booking to that number. So I think there's a pretty good, probably an absolute chance that we're going to exceed the environmental contingency balance on Rockwell and start drawing down from the regular owner's contingency.
Okay.
And you can also always find those numbers at the bottom of the PCO log as well, where we track, where we want to highlight to you the total number of, the total cost of change orders against the remaining balance. So we'll see those numbers again when we look at the PCO log.
Okay, and this doesn't include anything that's not been, if this is just to date, whatever we approve tonight will then.
Then we'll, yeah, right, then we'll revise this again. And you can always find, right after the meeting, I update the budget. So you can always find the updated budget on the shared drive, typically under meeting documents for the next meeting. So we'll create a folder for the April 28th meeting, and then you'll see these updated documents in there even ahead of that meeting.
Okay. So anything on the budget more for the, or do you have more stuff you want to talk about on the budget right now, Geraldine?
I was going to flow into move costs, but if anybody has any questions in general about the budget, we can do that now.
Anything?
Just for my records, just for the minutes. So for the owner's contingency left at Rockwell, is it the 726.3?
Yes.
And what about for construction managers? The contingency left for construction manager?
It is
408,
408.
408, 466, is that it?
That's correct.
Okay, yep.
Okay, thank you.
So as you'll recall, many months ago, we had a discussion about the move costs associated with the project. And so I'm going to keep the Rockwell budget up here. As an example, the original budget only had $20,000 to pay for what ends up being multiple moves for each phase. And probably back last spring, we got a quote from WB Meyer for work that was supposed to take us through the calendar year 2019. And we shifted some monies around from other line items and added in this case, $27,000, almost $800 to the Rockwell budget, so that we had a total $47,794 in the Rockwell move budget. You will see that to date, we have expended $28,341 of that. And then at Johnson, similarly, we had increased the relocation budget to $45,566, very last line on the third column in, and have approved invoices to date of $23,365. So on both of those, for both buildings, for both projects, we do have a balance in the previously approved relocation expense budget. However, later on today, we're going to talk about current invoices, because we did have some moves recently that will be, whoops, what happened to my screen? All right. Bear with me a moment. I took the wrong back arrow. Okay. A better accounting of where we are with move costs is on this spreadsheet, which I've also distributed to folks. So we have done 4 series of moves at each building, and the final entry on both schools, so line 4 for Rockwell, line 15 for Johnson, are the total of invoices that we'll be asking you to approve tonight. But after you approve those invoices, we will still have $9,900 remaining in the budget at Rockwell and about $9,800 in the budget at Johnson.
So will we be expecting to use those at some point? And will that be enough when we have to then move? Will there be moves back, or will it be all for FF&E and setting up all the new furniture?
So it will not. So one thing that we did, we asked Meyer for a quote, for an additional quote at this point. At the time, we were hopeful that schools would not be reopening again on May 20th. So we asked them to quote emptying both schools completely at this point. And the quote for Johnson totaled $12,434. So that will be in excess of what's remaining in the, in the budget. And the quote at Rockwell is for $94,8250. The original idea was we were going to ask you to approve both of these quotes, and that would have taken us through all of the moves that are left to clear the buildings. So nothing here includes the move back in August. And we've had a chat with WB Meyer. They think that even though we are going to end up doing some moves next week and then a second set of moves either around May 20th or June 16th, we won't be clearing out the buildings this week. They think that these quotes are still hold. And that combined with the balance that's left on the last set of quotes should get us all the way through all the moves through the summer. During the summer, we'll be able to reconcile all the move costs, and then get a final quote, which would only include moving contents. This is about clearing out furniture and boxes of contents. And in fact, on these quotes, a lot of it is packing costs, because when the teachers left, they didn't know they weren't coming back. So in order to move some of these offices and even the stuff that's stored in the cafeterias and stuff, we're looking at having the movers pack some of the stuff. So these quotes would, if we approve these quotes, we would be moving these dollar amounts from owner contingency into the relocation line item. And then, as I said, sometime over the summer, we would be reconciling all the numbers, seeing what's really left in that budget line item, and then entertaining quotes from Meyer to come back in August and move all the boxed classroom materials and all of the boxed office contents into their new final locations.
So just for clarification, what we're looking at are quotes, or are they actual invoices?
These are quotes. I know it says invoice.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute.
Right. And they have dates on them.
No, I think you're right. I'm on the wrong Meyer document. Okay, here we go. You are correct. So,
so those are different numbers.
they are different numbers. I apologize. So this is for, this is a good question of which building I'm in. All right. And of course, it doesn't have the school name on it. Let's see if it occurs someplace down here.
Darlene, I think that said Rockwell at the top,
Did
the
it-
first
did I
line
miss
of the letter. The second page.
Yeah, the next page down, I think it says, yes. So it says in the statement of work, it says Rockwell.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so yes, so forget everything I said about those other quotes. So to move Rockwell today, or this week, and then again at the end of June, or at the end of, or May, if they decide to cancel school for the rest of the year, the quote is an additional $16,216.
So that's more than what you showed in your original
It is.
spreadsheet there.
Yes, and then at Johnson, it would be an additional $19,495.
Okay.
So,
The quotes that you, or the invoices that you were showing us before is what they ended up doing. Partly when
In the last-
they were doing the move to do the transition between phases. The
correct.
school was going to not be closed down, and those are all the moves that actually were being done to get the kids into the new spaces, the students into the new spaces, so that the older spaces could be then worked on, and then everything
Yes.
happened, and they still moved everything.
Right, so we'll review those invoices numbers again when we get to invoices, but in Johnson, it was to clear out the second floor so that that phase could begin. And at Rockwell, it was to clear out part of the first floor classrooms so that Rizzo could move into those spaces.
Right, so those were both invoices we're going to deal with later. Those are actual expenses for what's already happened.
Correct.
These
And
are
as I
quotes of
said,
what you're
after we
talking
do-
about.
After we deal with those invoices, there will still be just short of $10,000 in each budget line item. But what I'm asking now is to increase those budget line items by the value of these quotes. So for instance, here at Johnson, where they're estimating $19,500, we would still have, we would move that money from contingency, but in the relocation line item, we would have about 29,000, about $30,000 to do the rest of the moves.
And then it still stays on the soft cost side, so it doesn't create any kind of like change order or GMP change kind of thing. It stays.
Absolutely. This is just about moving line items within the project budget. This does not increase the overall project budget, but it will reduce the owner's contingency.
But I mean, essentially you need what, like 7,000 on one and 8 or 9,000 on the other additional funds.
No, we think we need this entire 19.5 on Johnson and the entire 16.2
But
on Rockwell.
didn't
What
you
I'm saying is
still,
that there's also a balance in the line item budget that you already have. So to be safe, what I'm asking for is to keep that cushion in the line item budget where it is right now, about a little less than 10,000 for each school, and add this as an actual cost to the line item budget. The movers, as you will recall, charge by the hour. I mean, if we don't use their services, this is not a lump sum quote. This is an estimate of the time and the people that they will need to pack and to move things through the end of June. And the quotes are also, as Ken was describing about having smaller crews, these quotes are based on fewer people working more hours in order to be safe about how many people we're putting in some of these spaces to pack and move.
Is all the moving cost reimbursable by the state?
None of the moving cost is reimbursable by the state.
This is Gil. Was the library included, or did that have to move, or what's the status of that?
So at both schools, the libraries were packed at the very beginning of for the very first move. Right now, the library at Rockwell is not in the library, but it is stored outside the library because they're still working there. At Johnson, the library contents were moved from the second floor where Rizzo is currently working into the new library, but have yet to be unpacked, obviously, because they're not back at school.
Okay, thank you.
Caroline, is there a reason why we couldn't shave it closer per se, basically with your cushion or what you have? I mean, if we have to come back for some additional funding, we can come back at that time.
We certainly could. My theory was not to come back to you too many more times to increase that line item budget, but we could actually take these quotes, the 16,216 for Rockwell, and credit the 9,600 or whatever it was, that's remaining on that and the balance on that line item, and then just increase, for instance, the budget at Rockwell, $7,000 instead of $16,000. We could do that. We run the risk now of if their estimate was a little off, it's a little short, this or that, when we come back in June or the end of May to do the move, it might not you know, we might be in trouble then. But it's, yes, we could do that.
I mean, I don't personally mind readdressing it later on again if we have to. In fact, I think it's a better way. This way, at least we're really kept aware of trying to hold the budget.
Sure, okay.
That would be my feeling, and I can go either way.
And we had quotes in the beginning from them, which is part of when we had to look at readjusting those numbers. And I'm not recalling whether the quotes were like higher than what their actual expenses were, or did they kind of fall right in the numbers, or where did we spend less than what they had quoted for?
Well, no, in fact, one reason why we're still working off their original budget line item is because that original, if you recall, the original $40,000 at each school was supposed to only get us through the summer move and then the
Right.
first phase move. So they have actually done better than they estimated.
Right.
Yep.
So, and there's no reason to think that they won't continue to do that. These contracts, or these quotes are based on state contract set mandated hourly rates. They don't change. The contract with the state is typically a 3-year contract. So they're giving us a courtesy idea of how much money that we might spend, but the rates for the equipment and the people and the trucks are all set out in the contract, so.
Okay.
So if you want me to do some quick math to see what Roy's suggestion would result in. Yeah, Rockwell. At Rockwell, we would be looking to increase the move line item by $6,275. And at Johnson, we would be looking to increase the current budget line item $9,728.50.
So are we gonna look at doing that now, or?
If that's a motion to entertain.
I'd make a motion, it's Roy, I'd make a motion to increase it by those two amounts that Joellen just gave us.
I'll second it.
That was John Perna.
Can you just state that it's coming from owner's contingency, please?
Coming from the owner's contingency.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion from Roy, a second from John Perna. Any future or further discussion on this? Any other questions?
With everything going on, is there any kind of special application to apply for state reimbursement? I mean, this is not a normal thing that's going on for us.
The state specifically includes on every school project any move-related costs. I don't know what the rationale is, but that's absolutely one of their ineligible costs. So I don't know what the process would be to apply for any sort of waiver from that.
Hey, Geraldine, can you keep a tab on such items at that? John, I believe that, I 100% agree. I gotta think that there's gonna be many more items that we're gonna be hit with as extra costs. And
I think the state knows the predicament that somebody that's starting a project, maybe they would give it consideration.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's worthwhile tracking.
And we do keep track of that because there is a form that the state requires be filed every time you go to them for an approval. So for instance, for the furniture that we just had, the furniture package we just had approved, we have to update an ineligible cost worksheet. So there are things that have already been deemed ineligible. The moves are ineligible. Some of the furniture we're actually ordering is ineligible. And then for instance, on the furniture, they prorate the design fees. so that if you've got ineligible furniture, you also have ineligible design costs.
But Darrell, I'm more concerned of the so-called, the COVID-19 extra cost. I mean,
Oh,
if
sure.
we didn't have
Yeah.
to, if you didn't have to have everything boxed up because, no one knew that school was going to be dismissed at this point, that's an extra cost that really there's no way we could have figured out. I
Yeah,
don't see.
that's true. That is a good point. We would still be having this number of moves because of the way the project was phased, but you are correct that there are additional costs to paying the movers back rather than,
Right.
okay.
So I think if there's any items that Rizzo or yourself, anyone sees that is really attributable to the COVID-19, I think we ought to keep them in a category so that at least we can come back with a special appeal later on to the state.
Okay.
And not only that, Roy, is tracking the job when it's all said and done for the taxpayers, that we
Right.
say we ran into an additional X amount of dollars because of this happening in the middle of two projects.
Correct, John.
We'll start a spreadsheet and to track those items and try and identify as much as we can that we can push off to the COVID-19.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's very well worth, trying to keep a handle on that.
Right, because there could possibly be state
Significant.
funding from some other, area, not through, obviously, the reimbursement through what we're working on now, but it could be something completely different, where they're providing relief or something like that, which could
Correct.
happen down the road. You don't know. If we're tracking it, we could jump right into it if it becomes available.
Well, and
That's
especially
correct.
if there's any question about why costs are where they are, this would be one
Right.
we could utilize.
Mhm.
It would be helpful to have. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so we haven't voted yet. Does anybody else have any comments or questions on this motion to make that move into the move line of the budget out of owner's contingency? Any other questions? Okay, so all in favor, please signify by saying aye. So that,
Gil says aye.
okay, thank you, Gil. Is there anybody against? So it looks like unanimous. Thank you. Next.
Next on the agenda is the discussion of the third-party code review required for the playground documents. Let's see, where was that? So, as you might recall, for construction documents, the state also utilizes this same process. You can either, the state does not any longer review playground equipment documents for code conformity. So you can either have your local building official, fire marshal, and health director review and sign off on the plans, or you can retain the services of a third-party code reviewer to review all those documents, who then provides their report to the building official, fire marshal, and director of health. So they don't have to put in the time and the effort to review the documents. They sign off accepting the report from the third-party code reviewer, and then the state says, okay, you're good. You can, you're authorized to go bid that part of the project. So I checked with Chris Baldwin and Tom, and also with Laura Vasil, and they all agreed that they do not have the time or the expertise to review playground equipment documents for conformity, both with, there's a playground safety code as well as the building code, and they would appreciate if the project could support the retaining a third-party code reviewer to do that work. So we went to Pierce Associates because they were the third-party code reviewer for the construction documents. So this would not be a new contract. We would just amend their previous contract for code review services. And for each project, it is $3,600.
Are we, so we're, when we approve this, it becomes an extension of his existing contract with the town?
Correct. In terms of the contractual arrangement, yes, it would be the same terms and conditions would be associated with this contract. And therefore, we would not need to go out and bid this, bid this additional service.
Carolyn, I make a
Did you
motion we
say-
approve.
I just have one quick question.
So
Did you
wait,
say
first, wait,
30
hold on. So John Perna made a motion. So in order to continue to discuss, we're going to do a motion. So John Perna made a motion.
Second.
I need a second. I think that was Roy.
Gil will second it.
Second.
No, Gil. Okay, so now we can do discussion.
Okay, thank you. Did you say it was 3,600 per playground or for both? I'm sorry.
Per school.
Per
Each
school.
project is $3,600. And you can see in the services, they have to review specifically against the ADA guidelines, the fire code, this public playground safety handbook, which is a significant review, provide a written report, and also be available for any revisions or discussion. So.
Thank you.
And are the playgrounds for each school around the same size?
My guess is at this point, Johnson's probably a little bit bigger because we allocated $200,000 to that playground where we only allocated $145,000 to the Rockwell playground. So my guess is that they're a little different in size, but I think in terms of their review, they're looking at very similar issues with safety, exiting, spacing of, bars in on the pieces, things like that.
And does this seem like a competitive amount for you?
It does, in fact.
Okay. And I see in the letter of agreement, there's a place for an authorized signature. Do we have to have this checked or reviewed by Marty, or?
Well, somebody from the town does have to authorize this acceptance of this proposal. My conversation with Marty would be that this is an extension of this consultant's previous agreement. And I would hope that he could accept this proposal as an amendment to that.
Okay, so we might have to find out if it needs to be signed or not, or whether it can just be part of an extension. I mean, if it has to be signed, we have to find out who has to sign it.
Yeah, that is a question. I mean, we can always, based on, we have done it in the past, based on approval by the building committee and meeting minutes, other consultants and vendors have gone ahead with the work. So the question
Right.
is, what would make this legal in the town's eyes?
Right, okay.
And I
This
will
is Gil.
also say that the cost of this review would come out of the playground equipment line item in the budget, so.
This is Gil. I have a question that we never mentioned. Does the playground come or require a perimeter fence around it?
Yes, and that is part of the site work portion of the playground. So the playground is not just the equipment that we're going to place, it's the, there is drainage associated with it, there's ground cover associated with it, there is fencing.
Carolyn, I'm sorry.
there is.
There. So the fencing, the
Is part of the
mulch,
base-
and it's all part of the base contract, not part
That's
of the
part
playground.
base Contract, but that's all covered. That is all part of the playground.
Correct.
So does
Okay,
that,
thank you.
and so if that's all part of the base contract, but does it have to be reviewed as part of this, or has it already been reviewed when he did the original review?
It
So
was
the
already
fencing-
previously reviewed.
Okay,
So he's looking for things like fall protection, accessibility, and all the other code stuff that goes into the playground safety handbook.
okay, so any other questions, comments on the motion? Do we have to do them both separately? Probably not.
Probably could just mention them separately and do one motion.
Yeah, so
Give you one motion with both of them in there.
we do have a motion, correct? Verna made a motion. and-
Yep, you have a motion, you just need to vote on it.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, we will vote. So let's do that. All in favor?
Gil votes aye.
Okay. Does anybody vote against? Okay, so that's done. So we'll check into whether signatures are needed on this.
Yep.
I'm just taking notes. Okay, so then we go to the next item.
The next item is the Perkins Eastman additional services request. And I think who will take the lead on this?
Well, I'm going to start. I did reply to Joe and Joe on this with my input. And I believe there's a few other people who have who did reply also, but not to Joe's email because it just came to me and Geraldine and a few others. But I did forward it to the entire commission, as did Geraldine. And we have had some other input from other people. My comments and questions to Perkins Eastman, I don't know if they've come with more input. Basically, how's this going to impact the total budget, which is going to obviously have to come out of owner's contingency, and we looked at that earlier. So we don't have, if we have that come out of owner's contingency, doesn't leave us much cushion for other things. I know Roy and a few others asked the same questions that I did. How did we get to this point? Can we see some documentation on that? Your proposal does include, Joe and Joe, your proposal does include very specifically how you would deal with this going forward. Yet it's still, I mean, to me, the word I saw used was nebulous as to how we got to this point. You said how many hours you've spent and how much money you've spent, but it's not specific as to how did we get here. We have had unforeseen circumstances, yet I don't think that takes up all of it. And again, I know you came with this proposal and talked about it being something that was brought to your attention about through your accounting department, yet I think it was brought to you before we started having to deal with COVID situations with the kinds of issues that we talked about pretty much throughout the beginning part of this meeting, with the way work is having to be done, schedules having to change, etc. So I'm not sure if other people have.
Nancy, I shipped you a letter on that. And, I was really a little bit, pretty much very concerned as far as where we are. And, in light of the situation of where we are today with the state and the COVID-19 and the schedules and what have you, I would really like to see us proceed along as we do and not necessarily dismiss this request, but I would request that they keep track of what they have going forward as an extra so that we can see. There's the contract documents, I believe, require you to finish the job. And I would like to proceed along those lines. If Perkins and Eastman would like to go back and document the additional times and what have you, and bring it in as a separate item, I think we'd be willing to look at it. But, I don't understand how we can get to a point right now and then all of a sudden someone wakes up and says, gee whiz, it looks like we're not even close here. And, in my mind, I have a big concern. We have to keep this project on track. We're not going to allow this to stop, the project to stop. It's got to keep moving along. As far as keeping track of what they think is outside, Perkins and Eastman thinks is outside of the contract, or, beyond what the contract would have required, that's fine. Let's talk about it. But, to come back as a separate request on two different ones, which I think are incredibly, over the top as far as what the amounts are, I can't see it. And that's where I'd be coming from. And I'm really a little bit offended that this has come up at this point.
And I agree with Roy.
Like
So, I would
Gil's
really
likewise.
request that Perkins and Eastman keep track of what they did, take a look at it, keep track of, if Perkins and Eastman sees something that's going to require extra time beyond what the contract requires, tell us what it is, what it's going to be now, and we'll look at it as a, as a separate item. That's fine. But, to all of a sudden say, we don't have enough money in this, that's not where I think we should be going.
Gil agrees with that completely.
And I think this is a good time where moving forward to finish the project, if other stuff comes up, they start keeping a document and saying, like you're saying, Roy, what did it pertain to, and what was the reason, and how many hours did you spend?
Right.
And then this is something we could review after the project is done. But
I'm even
almost
willing
like
to look at it. I'm willing to look at it at that time.
Right.
If they see that gee whiz, this is getting out of control, tell us about it. Tell us how many hours. Gee whiz, this came back 6 times. Well, now at least we can talk about it. Hey, why did it come back 6 times? Were the plans not completed to start off with? Was Rizzo not doing their job? Who wasn't doing their job? We as a building committee will have no control of this project, if we allow this attitude to prevail.
I think, to me, it feels like we as a building committee, as representatives of the Board of Education and as representatives for the town of Bethel, in some ways are stuck between a rock and a hard place where, the rock is Rizzo and the hard place is Perkins Eastman. So here we are, we've got this difficult situation, not just with the way the schools, we knew ahead of time that we were going to have issues that were going to come up. There would be abatement things and unforeseen circumstances. We had that whole thing in the front of Rockwell School. All those kinds of things that come up that we've got to deal with. Otherwise, the project just comes to a screeching halt. There's that situation. Now we've got a situation where, and again, documentation would be helpful as far as where had the money, where was the money spent? Was it spent in RFIs? Was it spent on job site visits where you had to go and do some problem solving, et cetera, et cetera? And then we've got on top of it, this whole new situation with COVID, and it doesn't specifically create a problem, so to speak, with design, but in construction administration, it seems like the schedule keeps changing just because of the situation we're in right now. We were kind of flowing along to the end of March where we were going to do that phase changeover, and suddenly schools were closed. Creates some opportunities and it creates some problems. So there's a lot going on here, and I think that in general, we're not necessarily in a good place to make an absolute decision on this right now.
What was the total fee? What was the architectural fee for Johnson, and what was it for Rockwell?
I'd have to pull the budgets back up.
1.5, and I don't know what the other one was. I mean, it's right in the budget.
Jillian has it on her spreadsheet.
Yeah, if you get the
Yeah, so for instance, on Johnson, the total fee was $1,533,000, $265, of which $383,316 was construction administration services. And at Rockwell, the total fee was $922,803, and $230,700 was construction administration services.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You know, you look at the numbers here and just that one, that's $17,400 a month for 4 months, that's $69,000. There's no way this project can support that kind of money. There's absolutely no way. You don't have the money to do that. This is something that it's kind of disturbing, the amount here and how far we've fallen behind on this.
I think this is very disturbing. I think it's very disturbing that it was brought up. I personally don't mind you coming in and saying we're running into problems here, and we're getting too many requests from Rizzo. We're offering too many informations. We're doing different reviews. Then we, as a commission, could look at it and say, okay, let's see if we can get to the bottom of this and cut these prices and at least know where it's coming from. But to come back as in total, I think is very offensive.
Can we address some of the questions that Nancy issued in her email?
Sure.
All right, first of all, this is Joe Costa speaking. First of all, I don't want to put the building committee between a rock and a hard place. That's not our intent. And I want to, start off by saying this is not a difficult thing. This is a very difficult thing for us to do. We don't often ask our clients for additional fees, but quite frankly, the magnitude of what we've been spending on this job is way beyond anybody's estimate and certainly beyond what we were anticipating when we took this job on. And I have to remind everybody in this committee that Perkins Eastman actually established the percentage fee before we even actually started the feasibility study. So these fees that we're living and dying by predate the programming, predate the feasibility study, predate any kind of work that was actually done on this job. So and the data that is very, very old, and it's very hard for us to predict this kind of expenditure this many years into the future. Now, what we tried to do is explain where some of these costs were, why they occurred, but to ask us to go back 14 months and recreate the record of where exactly the money was spent, whether it was RFIs or submittals or coordination or site visits or any of the other thousands of things that we did on this job, is impossible. We were not keeping track of every single bit of activity on this job. Now, to address, the concerns that I've heard about, well, why didn't you tell us earlier? Well, when we talk about CA services, we typically address an average rate over the entire duration of the contract. Well, we know that some months the burn rate is a lot greater than the average, and some months it drops way off. But overall, over the entire length of the project, it usually balances out. The problem with this job is that it ramped up and it never dropped. And that's the mistake we made. What we should have done, perhaps, is several months ago, come to the committee and say exactly what we're saying in this letter now. Hey, we're burning at a much greater rate. We're going to need some relief or some help to balance the contract and to be able to continue providing services. We typically, we're hoping that the expenditure would go down and that this thing would level off, and it never has. And that's why we're here tonight and 2 weeks ago asking for an adjustment or a fee. I'd love to be able to go back into the past and say, okay, Joe Collada spent, 40 hours or 40 meetings looking at coordination, or Joe Collada or John, somebody else, spent X number of hours reviewing RFIs that were meaningless, or all the time that we spent looking at potential change orders that are not legitimate and should not have been presented to you guys to begin with. But I can't. I don't have that data. If I had known we were going to be in this situation, we would have made sure that we carried that information, we recorded it, and then we'd be able to show it to you today, but we can't. So these two particular proposals, as you know, we adjusted them to be hourly rate with the details that you're asking for. But instead of trying to recreate the past, these would be the details of the present and the future as we progress through the completion of the job. And that's the detail, I think, what you were asking us to do, and that's why we changed our proposal.
But Joe, this is going forward for past sins, or is this going forward for what you have?
The past sins are the past. So in other words, we're already in the red. We're already underwater, however you want to describe it, on this job. And my proposal does not capture the losses from the over expenditure we have so far. Anything we spend, every hour we spend on this job is a loss from here on to the end of the job.
And you just know that, Joe? You just know that now?
Yes, if you read my letter, right, we started becoming underwater a couple of months ago.
But didn't anyone in your accounting department tell you this, or somebody?
Oh, we've been, yes, but like I said, and I'll repeat it, we were hoping that this thing would level off, and it never did.
Okay, well, I just personally get the feeling that, you know, this goes forward. I mean, there's, you know, in my mind, you know, the bulk of the project is complete. So, you know, and it just seems like, okay, now we're going to put the full amount of the problem to the building committee / town. And conceptually, I have a problem with that. And you know, I can understand if you know, I also have a problem, you know, when you can't address where the money went to. You know, if there are items on that it took, you know, 10 different ways that you had to get things settled and said that that's obviously over it, I think that's a legitimate item. You come back to us, and I think that we're willing to look at those. But just to carte blanche say, you know, we're over here. You know, I mean, we picked Perkins and Eastman, you know, because of their design services. We think you guys were going to give us the best product for the best price. I mean, that was all part of it here. You know, to come back later on this just opens up a whole can of worms.
Well, I have to respectfully disagree, because we're already expending beyond the 25% of our gross fee doing CA services on these two jobs. And we've never spent over 25% of our gross fee hand-holding trades and construction managers through this process. That is something that has to be considered.
Okay, so why is that what it is?
Roy, we explained it in the letter.
Yeah,
and we've given you multiple examples.
Unfortunately, when I look at that and I look at the explanation, I go back to, and I'm going to be totally honest with you, I go back to the fact that maybe the stuff wasn't shown correctly in the plans.
Well, that's not true either, because there was a piece of information or a concern about errors and omissions, and we'd like to discuss with you tonight the performance of the team to date. And I've got to tell you, when I look at the errors and omissions as a percentage of the total job, I'm amazed how well this job is doing. You should be thrilled that the project is going this well. And those are in the numbers. Those are hard numbers to date. And I think the projects are about 65% complete. Joe, what are the percentage completes right now?
Yeah, I believe they're around 60% complete for the total construction, including, that would include site work. I think the buildings are a little bit further along than that number. Because I know the bulk of the site work is in the fall.
Yeah. So, I mean, to sort of sum it up, we rolled up our sleeves. We did what we had to do. We thought, quite honestly, that this thing would flatten out. We're still looking at coordination drawings. 6 months to completion of this job. That means we're doing coordination drawings 14 months into the job. It's never happened before. Okay? That takes a lot of time. And you can't say, oh, it's the drawings, because I hear that all the time, and that's just simply not the fact. Okay? We're not designing, we're not creating shop drawings, we're not creating a recipe. We're creating the intent of what this project is required. Now, should we have spoken up earlier? Probably. That's probably my fault, Joe's fault, for hope that this thing would have flattened out and we would have been better off at the tail end of the job. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like we're continually being called to help get this project across the finish line. And quite frankly, we run a business. We cannot continue completing this job at losses that we're looking at. This will not stand. We won't be able to staff it. We won't be able to be as responsive as it sounds like you need us to be in order to finish this job. This particular proposal allows you to look and review every single hour we spend on this job and make a judgment call on it. And I think that's fair, bringing us through the completion of the drawing. I mean, a completion of the project. Now, as far as the COVID situation, in some respects, we think the COVID situation is actually going to help your schedule to get the job actually finished ahead of schedule, I hope. I share the opinion of many people across the state that opening up school in late May is probably not practical. But until the governor and the commissioner makes a decision on that, we have to sort of assume that school's going to be open. But I just don't see it right now. You know, from what's happening in New York and New Jersey and other states, I just don't see us opening up school again. So I think that's going to be an advantage to the overall construction team, as long as they can continue to get materials and workmen on the job. But I think we're going to finish ahead of schedule. We're probably not going to expend nearly as much as these two proposals talk about. That's going to be a benefit to you and benefit to the town.
I'd like to think you're correct on that. I have other concerns on the COVID situation that, as we're starting to see now. So
yeah, my concern, quite frankly, is the material pipeline, and that's what we're seeing.
Labor too.
And labor.
Labor is a huge thing. Joe, you're doing Strawberry Hill School for us, right?
Yeah, in Stanford. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, well, yeah, Vikings having they're having a hell of a time.
Job site we're supposed to have 100 people on, we're down to 40.
Yeah.
So to Roy's point, this is evolving as we go on what it could cost, the time frame of the job. If you don't have the labor to build a job, there's nothing you could do. Nobody saw this coming.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible, especially down in our neck of the woods on our corner of the state. It's so close to New York.
Joe, I have to ask you though, I do really have to ask you this. A $2.4 million job between the two schools, and you have no way to track your labor?
No, John, we do track it, and we know that we were overexpending. But as I said before, what typically happens is it is a curve, not unlike the COVID curve, right? Where it starts sharply and then it tapers off. Well, the problem with this job is that it got to the peak and just kept there. It never dropped down. And that's unusual for renovation, expansion, school projects. At least what we've seen with some of the other CMs that we worked on dozens and dozens of jobs.
And why do you believe it won't drop off this time?
Well, even just recently, we've been asked to do a bunch of stuff. So I don't know why we would assume it would drop off, and we're not assuming it drops. I'm hoping it drops off.
Well, I mean, if that's typical, why wouldn't you expect it this time?
Just didn't happen. We're 6 months from completion of the main work, and we've got some site work we're still getting hit with RFIs. We're still getting coordination drawings. We're still getting submittals. We're still being asked to change, things, like the mechanical systems. We're still getting hammered with change order proposals that we're having to fight off. So based on what I've seen, I don't see any change to the behavior of the construction team or the requests and demands that are made of the design and engineering team.
So going forward, would you be opposed to have a monthly billing where you guys can actually track the hours worked by everybody and be more accountable to how the money is being spent and going out?
Yeah, David, I think that's what our intent is. Our intent is to provide you, in accordance with the proposal, a detailed table that shows who worked on what and what they did. That's exactly what we're intending on doing, so that you can see precisely that we spent X number of hours on a coordination issue. We spent X number of hours fighting off a change order proposal. We spent X number of hours doing an RFI that could have been in the drawings. So that's the kind of thing that we will track and present to you on a monthly basis at every building committee meeting.
Okay, but also to that end also, would you be holding, so I hear what you're saying, you're getting a lot of things thrown at you with last minute details. Would that benefit you in the long run as well as bringing it up, like not at the end of the month, but like as it's happening, shooting an email saying, look, we just got asked to do X, Y, Z. It's going to probably run you to X, Y, Z just for, I don't know how much work that requires on your end.
Well, I think that would be a nightmare to try to do on the fly, because you guys meet bi-monthly, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, our accounting department can only generate bills once a month. So I don't know how it would actually do that in a practical manner. I mean, we can give you a heads up if something egregious comes up that we think is going to, chew up a lot of time. That certainly we can do right away through Geraldine.
Okay, that would be good. Yeah.
Because look, guys, we're your partner. We want to make this project a success. At the end of the job, when we're sitting there cutting the ribbon or, whatever we're doing, whether it's virtual or in person, and I hope it's in person, we want to be your trusted partner. We want you to feel that you got excellent value from our talents and our services. We don't want a bitterness. We don't want resentment. We don't want you to feel that we ever put you between a rock and a hard place. That's not what our intent is. Never has been.
I tell you, that's the feeling I get now, Joe. And
I know, Roy. And I apologize for that. And like I said, it is very
pleased, very, very pleased with the team. Okay. And, to come out where we are, like with this letter, this was offensive to me. Okay. And maybe the way it was presented or whatever, we don't know anything about this. It really rubbed me wrong.
Yeah. I take responsibility for not, how could I say, going and alerting you guys officially earlier. What we should have done, say 6 months ago, is say, hey, it looks like we're spending money at a rate that's way beyond what we are anticipating. We need to either pull back our demands or get more money. At least that way you would have had more time to sort of think this through and make adjustments if necessary. But that on my part was wishful thinking, that this curve would dip down and we would be in better shape, and then therefore I could balance out the budget over the long period of time.
So other people have some input. Dino, I think you've got something here.
Well, what I'm concerned is we're not going to change any of the habits. Yeah, we are going to end up having to spend all this extra money. Just by getting it every month, it's already money spent. We can't control it. And I don't think that's a good position. Why do we, who is making all these requests? at double the cost.
And Joe Costa, I can understand some of what you're saying as far as putting your prices together for a project. Obviously, a lot of us have been in the same situation where you're putting a cost together for a project. You're looking at previous projects. You're looking at how costs went, something similar. You come up with an idea. And what I just correct me if I'm not looking at this and looking at your letter, you're not talking about the design development phase. You're talking about the construction administration phase specifically, and that's where your over expenditure is occurring.
Yes, and quite frankly, the CA phase fee is largely a function of the trades, CM, and job conditions. But historically, when we look at the last 15 or 20 jobs, and we look at the expenditures, 25% seems like the right number to get you through the project. So when we're spending twice the rate, it's not caused by us, or it's not caused by our services, or it's not caused by things we're not doing. It's caused by factors outside of our control, and that's why we're coming back to you with a request.
So Joe, what are those factors?
Well, we listed them in our proposals, if you have those in front of you, but it's anything from field conditions to what was shown on the original drawings is not what was actually built. It's getting things out of sequence, whether it be a submittal, whether it be an RFI. It's hammering back frivolous change orders. For example, this conduit change order that we spent a lot of time talking about last week, and we're going to spend more time talking about this week. We can go on and on and on, but generally, it's that kind of thing. I think that Joe has attended close to 40 coordination meetings on each job for a project of this size. There's something fundamentally wrong with that kind of a demand and that kind of service requirement on a project of this size.
So what do you attribute that to?
I don't know. Joe, do you want to chime in and talk about your experience? Maybe because you've been boots on the ground since we started construction.
So, I mean, with regards to MEP coordination, there's been a lot of issues with unforeseen conditions, dealing with trusses that are configured in a different way than we expected, and the trades having trouble getting stuff through. There was a lot of time at the beginning that Ferguson held up coordination with the path of their electrical conduits. That took a large amount of time. I can't even estimate how many hours was spent in coordination meetings, and that lasted until October discussing that. Where I would have expected that the MEP coordination would have been done by the end of the summer, at least, of last year. So it looks like we're finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel on MEP coordination. So hopefully moving forward, we won't be having to deal with that as part of our hourly services here. So that would be something that would help keep things smoother going forward. But the process was we have the meeting, answer a lot of questions, and then have to deal with RFIs of questions that we answered in the meeting on top of that. So that was going on. There was emails going on, conference calls on the sides. It's not even reflected.
Joe, you mentioned something about the software or lack of project management software.
Yeah, when we were starting the project, Rizzo at that time, I don't believe, had a software that was able to process RFIs and submittals over the cloud. Everything would have had to been sent back and forth email based. So we allowed them to use Nuforma to process everything, which added additional administration time on our end. So we have to receive everything from them. And for a submittal that has to go to the consultant, we have to send it to the consultant, receive it back from the consultant, and then process it back through our system and then back to Rizzo, which took a lot of additional time and added an additional staff person that we weren't anticipating.
So that was really, you know, what was
Go
wrong
ahead,
with
Dino.
their way of doing it?
I'm sorry, Dino.
What was wrong with their way of doing it?
We would have had to process everything through email, and tracking that would have taken an enormous amount of time, and I don't believe that was part of our contract to do.
So Joe, what you're saying is you have a sort of more central location where you do that, everything goes through the more central location using that software?
Yes, typical jobs like Strawberry Hill, like that John Perner mentioned, and other projects that we have. They use Procore, which is a system that the CM runs, and everything's managed through that system on their end of it. So they're able to send documents directly to the consultants, basically cutting us out of that administrative process, and then it gets sent back to us from the consultant. We review it and then send it back. In this case, there's extra steps because Nuforma doesn't allow that to happen from going from the CM direct to the consultant. They get an email notifying them that they have a submittal. They could see the submittal, but they can't process it. So that processing time takes at least, 10 extra minutes of submittal, 10 extra minutes of RFI, and at 200 RFIs and 200, 300, 400 submittals, I don't even know what we're up to anymore. It adds up over time, over the course of the project.
So Joe Collada, were you finding that in all this whole email process that things were moving, as you said, moving more slowly, but also were things getting kind of lost in the translation, or were emails missed?
No, it's not that they would miss, but the consultant has to wait for the processing through Nuforma on our end as well as getting it from Rizzo.
Nancy, I have 3 questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Joe, you said that this dates back to the feasibility study, that when you set your price for the CA for the construction services, but at that point you realized that this was going to be a phased project. So as the phasing go along, there's more coordination in all the phasings as versus one major project going on, isn't it true?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But what we can't predict 3 years in advance is, number one, the number of phases, how the contractor themselves will phase and subphase each of the pieces and parts of the job. And by the way, part of this request is because of some of the phasing issues and some of the issues that we had to address because of contractor decisions. So it's very, very difficult for us to sort of look way into the future and to be super accurate with what's going to happen with this particular job. And as I've said before, the way we predicted our fees and the way we set our fees is by looking at the last 10 or 15 jobs and sort of saying, how did we expend our hours? How did the phasing work? What was the sort of the curve associated with the CA expenditures? And so all that data is sort of plugged in to come up with what we think is a reasonable and practical fee for a particular client.
Well, it's hard to believe that, at the time of the referendum, when the project was passed and moving forward, and we got the construction manager on board that, and they were talking about the different phasings that your company didn't come forward and say, the way this is going to be phased, that we need to look at our fees structure again. You put a bid in on this project, and most times I bid, they have to hold their numbers no matter what they do. That's how some of the jobs go sometimes. You have to take it on the chin a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't know. As a selectman, we have to go back to the town and say, no one likes to see change orders on a project, and this is a significant amount, as Dino mentioned earlier. You were looking at 184,000 for one school and 124 for the other. That's approximately half of your whole allotment for the school, for both schools. And we only have 6 months left to go on it. It's a large number, and this committee has to make that decision, and they have to answer back to the townspeople. They answer to the townspeople and also to the Board of Selectmen about these numbers, and also the Board of Finance gets involved in it too. So, it's a lot goes downhill from here.
I completely understand the position that you are taking and also the town is taking. But at the same time, I have to be responsible to my business and to the people I work for and work with. And for us to be this far behind and still have a substantial amount of this project left, that's an untenable position for us. And I can tell that it's going to be very hard to continue at this particular level unless I can get some kind of relief. And if it's a matter of doing this on a month-to-month basis, we're certainly willing and able to entertain that. And we'll work however way you want us to work. But as I said, it's something that we need some help on. That's why we're coming to you with hat in hand.
So I think we've heard from most public site members, but I'd like to see if anybody has any other questions.
I have a question, Geraldine.
That are different than what we've already brought up. Well, I want to ask if any other public site members have questions or comments different from what we've heard already. And then we're going to get some input from Geraldine, and we're going to have to we could talk about this for another 3 hours, but I think even though we're all in our pajamas, we're not going to do that.
Hey, Nancy?
Yes.
The only thing, I'm listening to everybody's discussion here, and some very valid points on both sides. I really think, as a committee, we need to meet again, probably an executive session, even this week, to come up with a finalized game plan to digest this information, reread this information that Perkins Eastman has supplied to us, and really discussing how we want to approach it. I think it'd be crazy for us to make a decision on this tonight. Yes, they need to have a decision made as soon as possible and as quickly as possible, but I really think we need to look at this and digest it and talk about it under executive session, which would fall because it's a contract type of negotiation. That's my 2 cents for now.
Well, I'd like to have a question for Geraldine. Okay, we've already done whatever we've done, but going forward, how do we reduce their effort? In other words, and reduce the cost of their time?
I don't know that there's anything that we can do to reduce their cost. I think they need to figure out a way to reduce their costs.
I don't mean per hour, I mean total hours they're going to put in. They're basically saying it's going to be exactly the same as it's been, no change.
So if there are services that the architect refuses to provide, somebody else probably has to provide them.
I think Dino's question is if we're looking at Perkins Eastman's proposal and looking at in the letter that was sent, saying that, and kind of along the lines of what Joe Costa was saying, is that they've kind of been on a curve, an upward curve, and then it's sort of flattened out and it's staying flat rather than moving back down. If we're looking at wanting to spend less money on this construction administration phase, which I'm understanding Joe Costa saying that we should be spending less money in this phase, less time, et cetera, but they're still spending the same amount of time. Their proposal seems to be based on spending that higher amount. I know it's an amount not to exceed, and we could be definitely spending a whole lot less, but what can we do? And maybe this is something that needs to be considered, processed by Perkins Eastman and brought forward in a different way. What can we do to keep those costs down and not be looking at spending a whole lot more? I mean, we've got to come up with some sort of middle ground here. We've got to get the job done, and we're not going to spend that much and that much money. We don't think we should have to spend that much money. And how do we get to, and I'm not asking you to answer that question. I think I'm just sort of expanding upon what Dino was saying.
Well, all they have to sell is their time. So the question is, how can they spend less time on the project, I guess? And other than the coordination effort, which I did not participate in, and so can't speak to how much time that took and what the problems were with that, although I do understand it was extensive. On all of the other services that Perkins is describing, I don't see anything else that would not have been expected on this job. The number of RFIs, the number of submittal reviews, even the PCOs. We don't have that many, and we always require the architect to comment on all of the change orders that are proposed. So I don't see that the time spent on all of those typical aspects of a project have been excessive. And the only other comment that I want to make is that they were the low bidder on this project. And I think that their assumptions, whether they're 3 or 4 years old or not, were the same assumptions that all the other architects were making when they were putting their proposals together. And yet their fees as a percentage of construction ranged from 6.5% to 8.5%. So the fact that Perkins thought they could do this job for 4.5% maybe is a little bit on them.
Well, Geraldine, let me respond to that by saying, I have no idea what my competitors bid. And I didn't realize till this very moment that the town selected on low bid. But that's irrelevant to me. And quite frankly, we do have limits in our contract for review of submittals, for site visits, for all of the things that you mentioned. We're not subject to additional services. We actually can go and get additional services. So to say in a blanket statement that you see no reason why we spent this much time, well, that's not accurate, quite frankly.
No, you can't document it either. So all we're facing,
Geraldine,
you say
we're not, Geraldine,
a lot of time.
you're asking us or whoever asked us to go back in history and recreate an hour by hour analysis. That's impossible.
Okay, Joe, I don't think we asked for an hour by hour analysis. We asked for some documentation so that we could look at your numbers and see, you know, where was it going? Where was it being spent? How much time? You know, there's sort of what I've heard is there's 3 kind of main items here. There's unforeseen circumstances, there's coordination, and there's kind of a subheading of coordination where Rizzo as a company didn't have the kind of, you mentioned software or process for submittals and such as you were used to. And so it created sort of a more tedious and time-consuming process. So, you know, if we're looking at assigning percentages to where the time was going, was it, you know, we're over by 50% in coordination and 25% in unforeseen circumstances and 25% in paperwork kinds of things. You know, we need to be able to look at some of that kind of thing. I feel like we're not in a, we, the Public Site and Building Commission, representatives of the town of Bethel and the Board of Education are not in a position tonight to make a decision on this. Yet we know we have to do something to continue to move the job forward and do something sometime very soon in the future to resolve this. John's mention of a special meeting is one idea.
Yeah,
What I need right now is to have if there's other questions or information that we need from other public site members that haven't chimed in that are different than what we've already gotten. I think we need to hear that so that we can create some kind of process for consideration, future consideration, very near future consideration, and move forward. So
Nancy?
yes, who's that?
Rich.
Okay.
All right. You know, you definitely need to get the town attorney involved with this, so he can look at Joe's contract and see if there is wordage or verbiage in there that they're entitled to the extras that they're referring to. I think that's a key thing that you need, information you need to make a decision.
Yep. Thanks, Rich. Any Bob Germanero or David Olson have anything they need to get answered, or Gil? Because we've heard from most others.
I'm fine here, Nance.
Okay. And any further input that you have, Geraldine?
Not at this time.
Okay. I think what would be helpful to me is that, you know, we did have the budgets up earlier. I could pull them back up myself. I actually have them on my other computer, and looking at how much, it just went away. How much we have in contingency. I'm assuming that this would come out of our owner contingency, and we still do have a pretty substantial contingency on both projects, yet we're also still faced with environmental kinds of things that are going to need, especially at Rockwell, attention. And those are going to be coming up really soon. Plus, we're probably going to do some invoices tonight that'll make that environmental contingency go a lot lower. And while this is not going to change the GMP, it changes the other side, our side, the so-called soft costs, but I do think that we need to get some input from town attorney as to how we proceed with this. Is it simply a change to the contract, and are we able to do that, or do we have to get involved in a different kind of process? And then we also need to come up with some sort of plan, and the plan is going to involve us as a committee, Geraldine as our owner's rep, Rizzo as our construction manager, and Perkins Eastman, to make sure that we're just not running loose and free with the town's money and end up at the end of a job with $1 left in our budget. That won't be seen, especially in these circumstances where everybody's out of work and we're in the middle of trying to put a budget together. That's just not going to fly.
Agreed.
So I think I'd like to go ahead.
One other note that I'd like Joe to take a look at is the billable rates that he gave us. It seems to me that the range of billable rate is way too broad for my way of thinking. Is, you know, between 230 and 400 an hour, or 33 and 106. I think you know who the people are going to be. Get us a closer range of what the people would be.
What we can do is actually send you the people that are working on the job's actual rates.
Yeah, I don't need to know. You know, it's got to be closer than.
Yeah, that's just that's a standard rate sheet that we have in the book.
And then the other request that I would have, and I would have this either way on any discussion, is that if Perkins and Eastman could keep a record of additional hours or additional time spent, whatever it might be, attributable to environmental items. I would like to keep them, segregated to make sure that those are items that are rebillable, I believe, or reimbursable from the state.
Well, I think all of these are reimbursable.
Well,
And Perkins doesn't spend any time on the abatement issues.
Right, that's out of our contract.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do we know whether if we're raising the architect fee, does that continue to be, was that ever reimbursable?
It is.
It is reimbursable.
Yep.
So if we add to it, it's still reimbursable because
Yes.
come out of our contingency. All right, so I need some ideas of how we can go forward with with the project, keep things moving along, not have any slowdowns, and create a situation where that sort of curve that Joe Costa talked about is kind of staying true to what is normally seen on a construction project, especially of this size. I think we're going to run into a few more unforeseen circumstances, but how else can we? And again, it's getting already late and we have a lot of invoices to do. I don't know if we can hash all that out tonight. I think we might have to do it in a different way, and I'm open for suggestions on how we're going to do that.
I think John Mente's idea of doing a special meeting, I think the questions that came up to have Marty look at have to be done anyways. So I think we should, do those, as quickly as possible.
Okay.
If we can get something to Marty, and then possibly maybe once Marty gets back with his opinion, we can maybe do something at the beginning or mid next week at the latest.
Yes, and then the other part of that is how do we keep the costs reasonable, and how do we get all the parties who are involved in the project to agree to keep us moving forward and not having the same kinds of situations that we've had that have gotten us here. I don't know if we have answers. I'm just wanting everybody to think about that, because that's going to be more than us as a committee having a little meeting. That's going to be the whole team working together to figure that out.
Hey, Nancy,
Yeah.
does Rizzo have any input in this? What's their end of it?
We haven't seen this letter that was put up on the screen. We'd be happy to review it and give you guys a response. But, if there are specifics in the letter, we'll address them. We don't have an issue with that.
But you've been listening all through this, and as Bob said, what's your input and what you've heard so far?
I don't think it helps anybody. If their defense is to blame us, I don't think that moves your problem forward for us to blame them. We can take a look at the letter if there are specifics in there.
That's the smart thing. Let them, they should get sent a copy of the letters, let them review it. In all fairness to everybody.
We can do that.
Great.
Really do that. And I'm not looking for anyone, whether it's a commission or architect or construction manager, to be pointing fingers and blaming. What I'm looking for is us to come up with solutions. And however we got where we are, we can point fingers as much as we want to and demand that somebody take responsibility. But from here going forward, what we need are solutions. And we need reasonable solutions that are going to work for everybody.
Right. Project has to continue along without any breaks at all. I mean, it's got to happen.
So I have a question actually that I had looking at some notes I made. I did send an email to Perkins Eastman and I did share that, as I said earlier, with the commission members with a bunch of different points with questions. And I know that there is a Rizzo application for payment that we have to look at hopefully soon. And all those applications for payment that we receive from Rizzo require a process before they're brought to us. And part of the process, I know Geraldine's office and the people working on the project do a big review. It has to be stamped and notarized, there's signatures. So my question, and I think the signature is usually Joe Collada's, when you sign it, do you read the whole thing? Do you go to the job site and make sure that what you're signing is what we're given?
Yes, we review that. John Seibert, who's been going out to the site and the site meetings until very recently, reviews the pencil rec along with Geraldine, and then he informs me that it's a good to sign. And usually I sign it right before the building committee meetings. This past month, I met Ken at Goodwill in Monroe to sign it. So we could
So
socially
you have somebody
distance.
from your office that's been, tracking along and tells you whether it's good to sign or whether there's questions or problems.
Yes, yeah. John's been doing the more day-to-day construction administration efforts and attending the owner architect meetings, CM meetings.
And are you seeing that kind of situation as kind of staying level, or is it something that's going to taper off as we go forward from like today?
The meetings?
Well, his involvement and his, I know there's not a lot as much on site, but I'm assuming someone has to go on site now and again to do some checking.
Yes, yeah. So I think we have a plan of going after hours, after the contractors leave, now that it's staying lighter later for the probably duration of the building construction, and socially distancing. And we issued a letter to Geraldine, I believe, regarding that and our firm's policy on that. But yeah, I would hope that, I mean, again, to reiterate what Joe was saying, we're hoping that we're seeing the end of submittals, we're seeing the end of coordination meetings, and with the owner architect meetings being virtual, there's a little less travel going on right now. So we're hoping some of these things that you're looking for and this leveling off will start occurring. Just concerned that we're this far in and we haven't seen it yet to date.
Because you're starting some new sections. I mean, we're starting on some new sections, so I'm assuming that there may be some other things that come up.
Yeah, that's possible.
Okay, so can we? Yep.
Rizzo's on the line. Can you ask him, or I can ask? Do you foresee any major questions coming up with coordination or in the work that has to be finished yet?
It's at this point, I think it's more.
Did you hear me, Nancy?
I think it's mostly details. For instance, we're at the back of Rockwell, and it's an area where there was an alternate taken out of the contract, but there's no detail for what to do with the alternate out of the contract. So things like that are coming up as we're opening up these spaces. A lot of it has to do with discovering what is actually there is different than what somebody might have thought was there.
Is that good, Rich, or do you need more information?
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, because you know, as I mentioned before, the phasing, they're uncovering things as they just mentioned. That, you know, they're finding things, and there's questions that come up. You know, and they're asking the architect to review or how to proceed. And I don't think we just want the contractor to go ahead and, well, yeah, we need to put a new stud in here, or we need to block this hole up. I think they need the guidance of our professional people what to do in those situations. So their services are still needed.
Yes. And as was stated earlier, if, you know, somebody's got to do it. So any other questions?
Well, I have, this is Gil. I have another concern too about a diminished workforce. As this epidemic goes further into the month, that's got to be a consideration too if people are sick and they're not coming to work. So that's going to impact both the cost and the final results and the time that the things get done.
Well, right, and that was brought up a little earlier. You know,
I remember. Yeah.
it is something that's going to be going forward. You know, it's a question. It's. I think even day to day, I think Rizzo probably can say, you know, one day things might be going along fine, and the next day a contractor may show up with 3 less people because
yes,
they're sick or they're possibly sick or whatever. So I think we need to keep that in mind. Yet we don't have a crystal ball to be able to predict that.
And you can't. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we're going to agree to move on unless somebody has pressing something that's not been considered or asked, and get this resolved in the not too distant future. I would ask Perkins Eastman if we ask for some information from you that you can hopefully get it for us. I think we have a ton of information from what we've talked about, but if we need something further, like Roy said, with the more precise numbers, we would appreciate that. Anything else from anybody else? Okay, so, and we'll obviously keep you posted, and we're forwarding this letter to, I'm checking it out with Marty, because I did send the original proposal to him, but this updated one I have not yet done, so I will do that. And send it on to either Geraldine or I will send it on to Rizzo for their consideration and review. Can we move forward? I mean, we're going to keep moving forward. Can we move on in the agenda?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. If Marty needs to talk to me, by all means, he has my number. He can call me.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Building Committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking at change orders now, Geraldine?
Looking at change orders now. So at Johnson, we have one change order that was presented last meeting that you asked Perkins to go back and provide more information on, and we have one new one. So which would you like to start with?
Let's start with the old one, which is the feeder. Is that?
So the old one is $125,546.40 for additional coordination time, materials, and installation costs for the electrical feeders. This is a change order primarily from Ferguson.
This is for Johnson.
Correct.
Okay.
And the question last week or last meeting was to Perkins was to clarify what information was provided on the construction documents and in an effort to justify or refute Ferguson's request that this is a change from what they bid on.
So what did we get?
So I have information from DTC on the documents themselves. So and I have also looked back at past projects with other engineers, so that the electrical conduit routing I'm confirming that it is a means and methods by the contractor. The conduit routing is not shown in electrical design drawings for any project designed by any engineer, and I can confirm that through multiple different projects that I've been a part of. And then the plans indicate conduit and wiring sizes, locations of powered equipment with notes indicating the electrical panels to connect these devices and the locations of the electrical panels. Connections between different electrical panels is noted in the riser diagrams with locations of panels on the plans. So basically the entirety of the electrical drawings show you the information that Ferguson would have needed to prepare their bid. And then the routing of the electrical conduits must avoid work from other disciplines as shown on the contract documents, which we've stated prior, where we've shown on the documents that corridors are full of mechanical, plumbing, and fire protection work. So they knew that prior to their bid, that those corridors did not have space for their conduit rack as they wanted to install it. And then moving on, other locations in the general notes and electrical notes on E001 indicate about routing, and then spec section 260544 sleeves and sleeve seals for electrical raceways and cabling is another section where it specifically addresses conduits. We also looked at, what's that?
Is this a Ferguson change order?
It is. We also looked at the claim of that the routing was longer as per coordination versus what they bid. And what I found through taking a path through the corridor and taking a path through the corridor where it ended up being through coordination. And I actually found that the path was 3 feet shorter for the coordinated route, with the exception of 16 feet of going up a wall and coming back down a wall. So the pathway overall is 13 feet longer as coordinated, which per this PCO would equate to almost $10,000 a linear foot. So we don't believe it's justified, and we believe it's part of their base contract to provide.
Has this work been completed?
It's in process. I think Ken's report today said they started installing it through the cafeteria and music room today, or this week, or in the last week.
And is it proceeding along as expected?
I think Ken can answer that.
Yes,
better than I.
yes. They have the conduit in, and they're installing feeders. The junction boxes are in, they're installing feeders.
So Ken, have you talked to them on on this pricing? Based upon Joe's analysis of 13 feet and $10,000 a foot, it seems totally out of line. Is there some other reason?
Yeah, we went through where they were is about 225,000. We've been through this estimate with Ferguson a few times, and we actually ran it through Rizzo's electrical estimators. But if Joe's got something where he's saying there's a footage that doesn't make sense, we can take a look at that. But we didn't find any major footage discrepancy between what we took off on the drawing and what Ferguson had showed. But again, if Joe has something, we'll take a look at it.
But how about the discrepancy, Jim, if you could look at it as far as what Rizzo would have been pricing a similar job at?
Yeah, we did do. That's how we got him. He had he used a very and it's a lot of the electrical is just estimating software. Had used a difficult modifier than he needed to. So that was all part of the discussions that we had with him going back and forth.
Who authorized Ferguson to go that other direction?
Rich, say that again.
Who authorized Ferguson to go in that other direction? And did he install it on the fact that he might not get paid for it? Did he know about that?
Yeah, we had given him the direction that the town had given us, and he proceeded under protest.
That's okay. So that paperwork's already been filed, per se.
This was under protest, and if we refuse to pay it, they can take us to court, right?
Well,
my feeling is let them take us to court.
No, it's not. That's not how it would work. I believe if we accept this change order, it comes out of our contingency. If we don't, it comes out of the construction contingency. And it's not that they won't get paid. That's the way I see it, and I don't know if that's correct or not.
No, I think we're saying they're not going to get paid at all for it. Don't you, isn't that what you think, John?
No, that's not how it would work.
I think the town has the ability to say that they won't pay for it. And that's sort of a period. So then it does land back in the construction manager's court to do something else with it, renegotiate it, also refuse to pay it. It just, the question for the town is whether they want to take responsibility for it, whether they believe it's a change to the contract that they have.
I just have a problem with what Joe was telling us. They had an opportunity to walk through this building, to see the whole layout, and now they came at us first with this $200,000 change order, drop it down to $125,000. There's just something's not kosher here. I think we're getting screwed.
Let me ask Rizzo, was there room in the corridor for their conduits, period?
So that's a question to Ken or Jim. Was there room in the corridor for their conduits?
I'm sorry, I had said no.
Okay, got it.
So they had to go somewhere else other than in the corridor. And in a way, I think we're responsible for at least some of the costs of moving them. My personal opinion. I'm not on the board, but that's my personal opinion.
So Rich, what you're saying is you feel that at least their assumption, or perhaps Ferguson's assumption, was that they could go through the corridor, and when that wasn't feasible, they had to make other plans, and that provided an additional cost?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought Joe from Perkins Eastman just said that it was marked on the plan that they couldn't fit them in the hallway.
Joe,
that's what he just read off to us.
Right. There's no explicit thing in the drawing, say, electrical contractor, you cannot go here. It's based on other trades and coordination, which they own. So what the drawing showed was that there was mechanical equipment, ductwork, plumbing lines, mechanical hot water lines, cold water lines, and showed that there was no room in the corridor with the low ceilings and the low floor to floors to fit a conduit rack down. So their assumption that they could have gone down there is wrong to begin with. And so the notion of this being a revised path is wrong to begin with. It's not a revised path. It's a path that they had to take to get through the building.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have this change order. I'd like to deal with it. I would like to, if someone could make a motion as to what they think we need to do with this. And if there's more discussion, we'll do it. Otherwise, we'll then vote on it.
I think we hold it and not pay it. The process for that has already taken place, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, Rizzo just said, they said continue. Ken, how was it worded?
They're proceeding under protest.
Right. So they know we're protesting it. So we didn't say that we were going to pay it.
Well, but they're proceeding under protest, meaning they feel like they need to be paid. So at some point, we have to do something with, I believe, Geraldine, correct me if I'm wrong, we have to do something with this change order. We either approve it or we don't.
Yeah, yes, you need to act on the change order at some point. You could do it today, you could do it next time, but you need to act on the change order.
But also you have to act on it soon, because isn't that on the 6-month deal? To report it to the state?
Yes. I mean, ideally you would make a decision. Nothing is going to change, I don't think, going forward. So accept it, don't accept it.
So does anybody have any thoughts on what we'll do about this? You want to vote on it tonight? Yes or no?
Sure, let's vote on it.
Yeah, I agree with John.
Yeah, I agree, Gil.
Okay, so
agree.
Somebody make a motion.
I make a motion, we don't pay it.
I second it.
Who was the second?
David Horvath.
Okay. So the motion is that we reject proposed change order number 00004 from Rizzo, or from Ferguson, in the amount of $125,546.40. So there was a motion from John Perna, a second from David Horvath. Any other comments, questions? So the motion is to not approve it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's vote on it. All in favor?
I do have a
Aye.
question.
Aye.
Aye.
I have
Aye.
one question. If
Gil
we
is aye.
refuse to pay it-
Dino has a question.
If we refuse to pay it, does that alter their attitude about doing it under protest? Do they just not do it?
It's a good question. So will they stop working?
They
Ken and
could.
Jim?
I would be in no rush to give them the rejection. I don't know what kind of time constraint you guys are under, but we're kind of at a critical stage with them with the project. So they could take that action where they refuse to do the work.
And why would we want to put ourselves in that situation if they're doing it under protest?
So Dino, what would your recommendation be? To table the motion?
Table it until the work is done.
Okay, so I need a motion to table, I think.
I'll make that motion, Roy.
Second.
How's
Seconds.
Gil's? All right.
All in favor to table?
Aye.
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 Is
Gil's aye.
anybody against tabling? Okay, so then do we have to take that other motion off the floor, Kathy,
You
or
could-
do we?
You got to revise it, yes.
Okay, so then, John,
Did you vote for it? Because you guys are all talking, so I didn't hear you actually all vote for it. If you haven't all voted for it,
so
and you didn't all in favor, then it wasn't voted on. So you can basically say that you decide to, table it for now.
yeah, we voted to table it.
Right, but prior to that, you didn't actually vote on it. You made the motion, but you didn't actually vote all in favor or whatever, did you?
No, we stopped at Dino.
You
We stopped
stopped
at Dino.
Right,
need to
you had a
withdraw.
question.
Okay,
Yeah, so you were basically still under discussion, so now you just table it.
yes.
And you could ask for a withdrawal of the first
Yeah.
motion too.
The person who made the motion should.
Yeah,
withdraw.
Gil's in favor of that.
Okay, so,
Okay, John Perna withdraws his motion.
okay,
Okay,
so
Now,
that's
on this one,
tabled. What's the next change order?
you need to still vote on it. Did you say all in favor on this one for tabling the motion?
We did vote on tabling it, yes, but
I know, all in favor.
aye,
Aye.
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 and nobody's
Gil's
opposed.
aye.
Yep, no one's opposed to table.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
All right, the other PCO for Johnson is number 43. This is to add an acoustical ceiling, a finished ceiling under a landing at stair 2. This was work issued in Bulletin 4, and correct me, Joe Collette, if I'm wrong, but I think this was just information that was missing from the original set of documents, and
Yeah, I believe this was hate to say it, a Revit error because the lighting was shown in the drawings, but not the ceiling itself. So I'm not sure what exactly happened with this. And it was a very small section of ceiling, so it was not caught prior to construction documents getting issued.
so this is a change order in the amount of $761.16 to add a finished ceiling under the stair landing.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the change order 43 for the amount of $761.16.
Second.
Who was the
Gil,
second?
yeah,
Who-
Gil will second it if you wish.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions on this? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Is anybody opposed? That passes. Okay, the next one.
All right, we're over at Rockwell now. Again, there were 2 change orders that were deferred from last meeting where we were looking for additional information from Perkins. So the first one was PCO 29 regarding adding lights at the top of the elevator shaft.
Okay, so what I found in the code is that I didn't find anything regarding a light being required at the top of an elevator shaft. The only place I found that it was required is in a high-rise building where you have a fire access elevator, which we clearly are not. And then per the spec, the elevator company is supposed to meet any elevator code, so that would be ASME 17.1. So what I believe happened here is Otis requires a light at the top of the shaft, which is not a code requirement. And they also were not the basis of design, so it would not have been shown in the documentation. Our basis of design elevator was Kone. So this was one of the alternate elevators.
The large chunk of money for a light fixture.
And a receptacle.
And
They have to run a whole new circuit from the top of the elevator to the closest panel.
Oh, right, because it's a dedicated circuit.
Right. I don't find an issue with the amount of money and would recommend that since this is a requirement of the elevator manufacturer, we do have to do it. And actually, I think this work is done.
Yeah, some other elevator companies would actually provide the light and the receptacle on the top of their cab. I don't believe Otis in the Gen 2 elevator has that feature.
I'll make a motion that we pay it.
Second.
So that's the motion to approve change order. This is Rockwell change order number, what's the number? 29. 29. In the amount of $4,980.48 with Roy making the motion, and I think Dave Olson seconded it.
Yes, I did.
Any other questions or comments on that? Hi, Carol. Any other questions and comments on that? Okay, let's vote. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And anybody opposed? All right, so that's done.
All right, the other leftover PCO is number 32. This is for concrete masonry unit demolition through intervening walls to make way for the primary feed that was not located. Again, this is a little bit similar to Johnson's. So primary feed was not located through the corridor. Instead, it had to move out of the corridor to accommodate other trades and is run just off the corridor, but through some intervening walls. So this is not a Ferguson change order. This is the demolition contractor who would not have known that they needed to do this demolition when they were bidding and did demolition for the electrical feed. So Joe, do you also want to speak to this one?
Yeah, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the response from DTC that typically installation doesn't require demolition of entire walls, but instead requires penetrations through walls. Not sure why it was chosen to demo in section of the wall, other than it being a large rack. And then the General Electric notes on E001, they point out notes 1, 2, 14, and 17, along with the spec section 260544 sleeves and sleeve seals for electrical raceways and cabling, indicating what was expected in the documents. One thought that we had is with the electrical, if the MEP coordination had been faster, that maybe this would have been identified earlier, and this work could have been done as part of summer work since it had to be removed as hazardous materials. I could read through those notes as well.
Wrong phase.
So,
Wrong phase is
Um,
what I'm hearing from Ken.
Yes.
So are we looking at the dates on this? Are we falling within the 6-month time frame where we're going to get some reimbursement for this, or are we outside of it?
Ouch.
Let's see.
I mean, the date of it is,
It was December, wasn't it?
well, some of the dates are starting September.
Yeah, the September date's definitely out. Actually, the November dates are,
Wouldn't that be May?
it's May, so we have a shot at that if we hurry up and get the change order in.
I mean, this one's kind of awkward because, I mean, really the demo guys are really doing the work that was, you know, pushed over to them from Ferguson per se. Is that the right assumption?
That is the characterization, yes. This work was done for the convenience of the electrical contractor.
Correct. I mean, you know, it's very similar to the Ferguson one. Unfortunately, the demo guy's right in the middle of it.
And it's PCB block as well.
Yeah, which
is why the cost is so high. It is not just removing a series, making a series of openings and walls. It had to be done as an abatement project.
Right.
So does this cost, the total cost here, include the abatement part?
Yes.
Okay. And are we going to find, is this kind of a usual sort of thing with a change order where it goes over a extended period of time, and some parts, if they're not submitted quickly enough, are going to be reimbursable and some are not?
I wouldn't say it's typical, but I think that the way they packaged this change order, obviously they were compiling all the different times that they had to penetrate a wall. And so it is possible that when the state reviews it, they will eliminate the charges that are earlier than, that exceed the 6 months.
All right, so in order to get some more, to get reimbursement for this, we need to act on it more quickly. And I don't remember what your recommendations were the last time we looked at this, Geraldine.
Well, this is an awkward one in my mind. It really puts the demo people, you know, at risk for something that they really didn't create. But I do believe we should be paying it, especially with the reimbursement, you know, being so close time-wise on that. And also, I mean, the only thing that, in my mind, if we can put that under the environmental one, which we know is running over budget, but I think we've gotten a verbal from the state that they would, that one they would probably pick up on, I believe.
That all is true. We would book this to the environmental contingency, remembering that there's only $34,000 left in there right now.
Correct.
I think that we would continue to track all of the environmental costs so that at the end of the project, I think what Christine said was they would get one chance to appeal to the commissioner to add funds to our project for the excessive abatement costs at Rockwell. So we would track all of this, even going forward as we draw down on the owner's contingency for abatement work, we would still be tracking all of that work so that we could make that request.
Right, claim. So in this, I would, you know, I would recommend that we do pay this so that we can proceed along those lines.
All right, so is that a motion, Roy?
I'll make that as a motion to get some discussion going.
Okay. Who's the second?
Dave.
Second it, John.
All right, so Dave Olson seconds. Any further discussion on this? We had some good input on it, and anything else? Roy's motion is to approve, and there's a whole lot of documentation kind of going along with it there.
Yeah, I was looking. I thought that there was I thought there was a plan, but you can see the number of walls that they had to take out. Each one had to be contained and abated.
Yeah, there's a lot of work there, and unfortunately, kind of goes back to the Ferguson part of it, but, you know, at this point of the project, I think I'd hate to lose the reimbursement to it. So I think we got to move it forward.
You know, in a better world, we would back charge the electrician for this work, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Correct. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And also, every one of those rooms, I had to move things out probably twice.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a lot of extra work for everyone, Bob.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. We've had some discussion. Any further questions or discussion?
I just want to review the cost again, 53,475.41, Geraldine.
Yes.
Yep, that sounds
And
right.
it's going to come out of environmental contingency, right?
Well, there's not enough left in the environmental contingency, so it's going to have to come partly out of that and partly out of owner's contingency.
Yeah.
Okay.
This will expend all of the environmental contingency.
Okay, thank you.
And would obviously both would result in a change to the GMP. So we're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone that is opposed? So that one passes.
That's all that we had for change orders. I just want to point out that where I had listed change order 39 and 40 here at Rockwell, these were both change orders proposed and associated with the gym floor abatement, but I sent them to Enviromed, who put together a good analysis of revisions that should be required of these change orders. So we're sending those back to Rizzo for revision, and we'll probably bring them up next meeting, or we'll bring something up next meeting. And just to point out that on all the change order logs, is always a list of the change orders, or the proposed change orders that have either been reviewed by the design team or are pending review by the design team, or are being sent back to the construction manager based on the design team's review. So you can peruse those at your leisure.
And they're continually updated and available at the Google shared drive thing.
That is correct.
Okay.
So that is it for change orders. So the next thing is invoices and the Rizzo requisition.
Okay, which one do we do first? Should we do Rizzo?
Rizzo.
Okay. Trying to find that.
I don't. Yeah, this is. While you're, I have Johnson up on the screen. While you're finding that. So first of all, Ken did drop off the originals to Town Hall. I don't know if you got a copy of those, Nancy.
I did not. I don't know what time he dropped them off. When I left at 3:30, they weren't in they were supposed to get put in my mailbox with whoever checks the Dropbox throughout the day.
Do they check that once a day or a couple times?
No, they're out there several times a day. Depending on if someone knows that there's a couple of people, I think the town clerk and the tax collector and one other person checks them. Oh, Kathy. So Kathy wasn't in,
okay.
Kathy wasn't in today. The time that the tax collector went out at like 1:30, they weren't there. So Ken, I know you said you were going to drop them off in the later afternoon.
Yeah, it was 3 o'clock.
Then I missed it. So
you'll see it tomorrow.
Well, if you're going to look at this and vote, but Kathy will probably, I have to bring stuff into Kathy anyways to sign, so I can sign it. My understanding from finances, we got to get stuff in by noon, so we're going to be busy in the morning.
Okay.
So this is the, and Geraldine, these are all checked, and I know there was some back and forth on lien waivers, so I didn't know whether.
Yes, so I'll just fill in that for both requisitions, we have received and reviewed and accepted all the required lien waivers from the previous month's payments, except there are two contractors, where are my notes? On Johnson, we do not have a lien waiver from Legere and CSNE. And on Rockwell, we don't have a lien waiver from CSNE. And the reason for that, Jim, correct me if I misconstrue, but both of these contractors have issues with their certified payroll submissions. And so their payments from last month are being held until they correct their certified payroll submissions, which is a requirement from CHRO and the project. So they've legitimately not been paid for last month. So I would recommend payment of both of these requisitions.
Okay, so then what we've got on the screen right now is, what did you say? It was Johnson?
Johnson, yep.
Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the Rizzo application for payment for Johnson in the amount of $1,891,289.79.
Second.
Second from Dave Olson. So with Geraldine's explanation, I think we probably don't have any questions, but if there are any questions, please bring them up. Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed? So that motion carries. The next one for Rockwell. Here we are. Okay, so I'll make the motion and we can have discussion and input. I make a motion that we approve the Rizzo application for payment. I can't see the number, but that's okay. We'll put that in later. For Rockwell School in the amount of $1,101,719.85.
Second.
We got a second from Dave Olson. Is there any input on this or was your, Geraldine, your?
Same explanation. We're missing one lien waiver legitimately because they have not been paid based on revising their certified payroll.
Okay, so they're working on that. Any other questions, comments on this application for payment and my motion? Hearing none. Everyone, please vote. Signify by saying aye.
Aye. Gil votes aye.
Okay, and anybody opposed? Okay, we're good. That passes. Now we have a whole bunch of other invoices that we're gonna have to run through. You're gonna put each one up, Geraldine?
Do you have an order, or do you want me to just?
I kind of had them they seem to have come up for some reason, and maybe it's just the software. They seem to come up in alphabetical order, so I've got Hertz.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Yeah. So this is an invoice for furniture delivered to Rockwell School. And
so some of these are, there's a bunch of them that are, and I think most of them are FF&E.
There are
except for some that are for IES, STV, special testing, but there's several that are for FF&E.
Yep.
So I'm gonna, I'll start doing the motions. Somebody can second if you have questions. I make a motion that we approve the invoice from Hertz Furniture. Invoice number, I don't know if there's an invoice. This is for Rockwell School.
Yep.
Invoice number, I can't.
Top right.
Invoice, 649586 in the amount of $3,626.76. Is that, yeah?
That's correct.
Yep. Okay.
Shelving and storage.
Second.
So that was a second from, I think, Roy.
Or David.
Yes.
Either one.
Okay. Any questions on this? Shelving and storage? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Does anybody oppose? Okay, that one's done. All right, next one. I think I have IES. But
IES.
yeah. So we've got two for IES. I'll do, what do we have up there first? Johnson, it looks like.
Johnson, yep.
Okay. So I make a motion that we approve invoice. This is IES for commissioning from IES. Invoice number 14732 in the amount of $4,517.50.
Okay.
Got a second from, I think, Roy. And any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, that carries. The next IES invoice is for Rockwell. I make a motion that we approve invoice number 14731 from IES in the amount of $4,161.95.
Second,
Second from somebody.
David Horvath.
Dave Horvath. Any questions, comments, etc.? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Done with that. Lord, Robert Lord.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay.
It was,
I actually printed them because I have to sign them and give them to Kathy. So, and I just have them in a pile. So Robert Lord, this was for Johnson, and they were kind of wondering where their payment was because I think we missed it last time.
yes, we did.
So this is some flooring stuff and, right? Flooring, carpet.
No, this is chairs, tables, classroom furniture, some more storage systems, soft seating.
Oh, that's what it was. Yep, okay. I thought I said something about, the carpeted floor is where it's gonna go, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it looks like it is primarily library furniture, but
Okay,
yeah, it's all received, checked in, and inspected.
so I make a motion that we approve the invoice from Robert H. Lord Company, invoice number 33803 in the amount of $68,226.50.
Second,
So second from whoever did that. Who's that?
that was Roy.
Okay, Roy seconds. Any questions about this? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Done. Next do we have to do the Myers ones?
Yes.
So those are actual invoices and the quotes were different. So the quotes we did earlier, but the invoices,
Are for moves that were done at the end of the first phase. Those.
right. I have to find them because they're not in the pile that I had here. Unless you have them there and can call them up.
I do. So at Rockwell, it is invoice 220-012948.
So I make a motion that we approve that in the amount of, you got to scroll to the next page.
$9,482.50.
So that's part of my motion too.
Second.
So I second, sounds like Roy. Any questions on this? We kind of discussed all this earlier. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Anybody opposed? Good. So then the other one is for Johnson.
Correct.
I have it here somewhere in my piles of papers and I'll find it later, but not now.
Invoice number 220-012946.
For Johnson in the amount of, keep scrolling,
There we go.
$12,434.50. So I need a second.
Second,
Seconded, Gil.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Done. Next one I have, I believe, is Perkins Eastman.
Which school?
Well, it doesn't matter. I got them all right here and
All right. I have Johnson Construction Administration work.
yeah, so we'll do Johnson Construction Administration first. This is Perkins Eastman. Let me make sure I got the right one here. Yep. So Perkins Eastman Construction Administration services for the month of February, invoice number 68962.00.0-26 in the amount of $15,428.19.
Yep.
I need a second.
Second it.
Seconded, Gil.
Okay. Any questions, comments on this?
One comment from Roy. As you can see, the construction administration costs 25%, 230,000. And I believe on that one, they're looking at plus 123,000. Just a comment.
Okay, I'm not, so.
Doesn't have anything to do with approving this. I don't have a problem with this. It's just an eye opener.
Right, okay, got it. So let's vote on this then. Thanks for the comment, Roy. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Done. And so should we do Johnson, FF&E? There's one for Perkins Eastman.
Sorry, wrong one.
Okay. So I make the motion that we approve invoice number, and this is again for the month of February, invoice number 68962.01.0-8. For FF&E Johnson, the amount of $5,140. Second, somebody second, please.
David, second.
Whole bunch of people seconded. Bob Germanero, I saw his mouth
Yeah,
moving.
not a problem.
Okay. Any questions on this?
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so Perkins Eastman Rockwell, this is construction administration. I make a motion that we approve Perkins Eastman invoice number 68961.00.0-26 in the amount of $9,229.56.
Second.
That was from Roy. Second. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done. And then Perkins Eastman FF&E on Rockwell. I make a motion we approve invoice number 68961.01.0-8. That's FF&E for Rockwell in the amount of $2,750.
Second that.
Okay, got a second from Roy. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
I did have one question.
Okay.
For Perkins Eastman, didn't we give them the FF&E as an extra?
Right, that's a separate contract.
Yeah, but it was an extra, my point. To
No.
the original contract. Originally, we had nobody doing the FF&E.
I think we had money set aside to have somebody do FF&E, but it was separate from their,
Right.
their design.
And we gave it to
contract.
them after.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Thanks.
Yep. Anything else on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody opposed? Done. And then the next one is Red Thread.
Yep, Red Thread.
Yeah, what's Red Thread? This is for Johnson.
Yep.
More furniture.
Yep.
So I make a motion that we approve this invoice, which I'm not sure. Oh, let him. Yeah, 823952 in the amount of $2,950.
Seconded.
Got a second. Any questions on it? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Done. Special testing laboratories. There's one for Johnson, one for Rockwell. So I'll do the Johnson. Oh, you got Johnson up.
I got Johnson.
All right. So special testing laboratories, make a motion. We approve invoice number 34035 in the amount of, that's a total, yeah, $1,450. Need a second?
Gil seconds it.
Okay, got a second from Gil. Any questions? This is obviously some mostly field or steel and some of the fireproofing. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Done. And then special testing for Rockwell. I make a motion, we approve invoice number 34036 from Rockwell School, from Special Testing Laboratories for Rockwell School in the amount of $2,164. This is some concrete.
Gil seconds it.
Yeah, okay, Gil second. Some steel, some concrete, bunch of concrete. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done. STV? Which one's that, Rockwell or Johnson?
Johnson.
Okay, I make a motion, we approve the invoice from STV for Johnson School, invoice number 90016591 in the amount of $24,003.
Second it, David Horvath.
David Horvath seconds. Any questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done. This should be the last one for STV Rockwell, unless you've got some that I didn't get to
Nope.
print.
This is the last one?
Okay, I make a motion, we approve the invoice from STV, invoice number 90016592 in the amount of $15,551.
Gil seconds it.
Okay, second from Gil. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done. All right, is there anything else?
Nothing that requires action.
Okay, I have a question, actually. I don't know if everybody's still here. We dropped one person, don't know who that is, might be Rich. Question for Perkins Eastman in the different invoices that we've gotten and payments, et cetera. Are they per the contract amount, percentages per the contract amount?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's going along the percentages for the contract amount and the amount that we're just paying you for this invoice, where does that put us?
For the invoice that you just approved for February?
Yeah, so we approved the February invoices. And it's, your proposal is basically saying that it's March when you, like this month, that we're out of money. So are you at the end, you're at the end of your amount as per contract right now?
Right, for our portion of the contract. So the invoice actually reflects the full amount, including consultants.
Okay. It's just something we'll look at. Geraldine, you're going to say something?
Well, that raises an interesting question. So if the additional services to proceed with construction administration are all Perkins Eastman hours, do we run the risk of also seeing an additional service request from any of your consultants?
I'm not sure about that.
That was something we would desperately need to know.
Yes,
Okay.
it would, a no to that would be better, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't see as we could make a decision, even if it were tonight, without that information.
All right, I will review that with Joe Costa. He had to step off. He let me know that he had to step off
Yeah, well,
the call.
I would hope that you're not going to contact any consultants and say, would you like some additional services, you know, but
No.
but I think we would want to evaluate a comprehensive package and not not have you come back again.
Okay. I will review that with Joe.
Okay. Anything else that anybody has on the school projects for Any questions for Perkins?
Yeah, I have a question.
Who's that?
Oh, Rich is.
I have a question.
Sure.
Rich. How are we doing with SCB's budget?
With whose budget?
Carolyn's budget.
Oh.
SCB.
I actually have reviewed that recently with Scott, the project exec. We have in excess of $100,000 left on the contracts, so we're solvent for the next few months. So
So are you finding that you're expending more time than anticipated?
we are, but we're trying to absorb it within the contract that we have. I will say at this point, we are finding that we're particularly I'm spending more time than I anticipated. There are some tasks that we've taken on, primarily the change orders with the state and some of the other state interactions that I have typically seen be the construction manager's responsibility. So we are spending a little bit more time, and much the same as Perkins Eastman describes it, there is more management time required based on the inexperience of Rizzo with these kind of projects. So, you know, but on our part, it's probably not as drastic as has been presented from Perkins Eastman. We're trying to manage it.
Okay, thanks for that. Is there anything else we need to look at on our school projects? Any questions anybody has? Any other input? Our next meeting our next regular meeting would be
28th.
The 20, is it 28th? Yeah. Huh. And I'd be able to be there because there's no primary that day. But we will look into coming up with some ideas of moving forward with the proposal request from Perkins Eastman. I'll start with review by Marty and would greatly appreciate any input. Hopefully if you're gonna, well, not hopefully, but if you send some ideas to myself, include Geraldine and John. We've definitely got written feedback from Roy, got written feedback from John Perna. It was greatly appreciated. It was a lot of good information. So if anybody has anything else, any ideas, please bring that up.
I'd like to be CC'd on that also, if possible. It's from Roy.
Well, anything that I get from people will be distributed to everyone.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. So it would be.
I want to make one recommendation that anybody that's going to come back to us for extra charges, that we maybe keep some kind of log on where things came off the rails.
Correct.
We still have a couple of our contractors out there, right? We didn't lose anybody yet, even though we're 3 hours into it.
Is anyone keeping an issues log? Is there an issues log that's being kept?
Well, that's my point. If anybody has in the background of possibly being over, so what we already experienced with Perkins Eastman, you know, maybe somebody out there is afraid to say something to us tonight, that they might want to keep a log. I just find it very hard to believe on a $2.5 million job that you don't have a way to log your time, whether you're working on FF&E, whether you're working on prints, whether you're working MEP, whether you're working in this world of ages of computers. I mean, I think somebody at the end of the week is justifying what they did for 40 or 50 hours.
Well, I will say that, for example, if you examine the STV invoices, when you get past the first page where it's total, there is a list of what I'm doing every day, how many hours, what Matt's doing on site every day, how many hours, and if anybody else, obviously, in my firm works on well, Rick, when he's managing the moves and the furniture. So we bill you for every hour, for the hours that we work, but we also tell you it's 2 hours this day, it's 4 hours that day. While we have not ever noted what was beyond maybe our contractual scope of work, it would be easy for us to go back and do that, because we have to provide on our timesheets what we're doing every hour of the day.
Yes. I would imagine.
We do too.
Yeah.
Anybody today. Yeah. Okay. I know there's a certain amount of bragging rights that everybody's going to be able to say, we did 2 schools at the same time for Bethel when they move on to their next client. But I don't know how many hours that is that we're entitled to.
Well, we're all going to be able to,
do we get any? 10 hours, 20?
we're all going to be able to say that, I think, right?
Yeah. I'm still waiting for my vest from the town. Where's Richie? Richie, are we getting vests when this is all done?
Oh, yeah, right.
A bulletproof vest, maybe.
Okay, so anything else that anybody
I'll tell you what, we'll put your name on the wall. John, we'll put your name on the wall.
All right, that's a deal.
Run it in the cement in the floor.
Okay, so we do have 2 other items on our agenda, but they don't require school folks to stick around unless somebody has anything else for school that we need to deal with. We'll go quickly through the rest, but I think Geraldine and
Hey, Nancy.
yes, Bob.
Yeah, John just asked me about a possible walkthrough, but I can't for the next probably a couple weeks. I'm on lockdown. My daughter tested positive, so I'm in quarantine. So if anybody wants to tour the site, I can't do it. Sorry.
Completely understandable, Bob.
Okay.
But if
Yeah, sorry to hear that, Bob. You've got to.
we could certainly get
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Matt that works with me he's there every day. You know, we could, if there is interest from somebody, we can arrange something, unless you'd prefer to wait a few weeks, which might be advantageous anyways.
Okay, so that's good to know. If anybody needs to do that, they can work through Geraldine or even Ken Hunt. So sorry to hear that, Bob. I hope things work out well for you and your family.
Yep, so far so good.
Good, good. So I think Bob and Dave Olson and Rizzo and Perkins Eastman can go away if you want to, or if you want to stick around for the rest of our excitement, you can do that.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
Be
you.
safe.
Bye.
Good night, thank you. I'll be in touch with various people on different things. And
Bailing out like crazy.
y'all better not go away, because I got some stuff for you. So I have to get to another place to get. So we're not supposed to, well, I actually had some emails today so we're going into the police station. I had a couple of emails today, but couldn't, I'll forward the stuff to you, because all the documents or anything that's to be shared at our meetings has to be posted at the town website 24 hours before. So since this stuff came in today, I can share the information and then I'll forward it to you. I had emailed, last meeting we talked about, we need to do something about the firing range. A, and B, that I had a meeting with, brief meeting with Chris Baldwin. It was just a drop-in kind of thing. Neither of us was prepared with lists or whatever, because in my estimation, we should be able to move from having a temporary CO to having a permanent CO if both the firing range and the main part of the building were two separate permits. We should be able to get a permit on that. So I did email Jeff Anderson and a bunch of other Downs people and asked where were they in this whole process of COVID, et cetera. Are they working? Which I assume they are. Most large construction companies are. And he did answer and say that they're working, implementing CDC guidelines, et cetera, and suggested, as far as doing the walkthrough at the firing range, that obviously we can't have more than 5 people in the space at a time, that there be 1 rep from Hoffman, 1 rep from Downs, 1 rep from CT Masons, 1 rep from the PD, and 1 from Public Site. That would be the 5 people inside doing that walkthrough. It doesn't mean that others of us might not be outside hanging out, wondering what's going on, staying far away from each other, wearing masks, etc. So Jeff's going to check in with Hoffman and CT Masons on their availability, see if we can set something up. And then he also said, I don't understand why you would not have a CO. As far as we're concerned, other than the shooting range, we are complete. Well, whose responsibility is it to go out and get the CO? I thought it would be the construction manager once processes were done. As I stated last time, Chris Baldwin had said that he was looking through, he had his punch list. I'm going to try to find some lists that we had put together too about outstanding issues and warranty issues. Some of the warranty issues, which things like the flagpole lights, Chris was going to hold those as something he wouldn't give a CO unless those things were working properly. So in my remembrance, all of that work has been done. So it should be good to go. He may have to do a walkthrough, but he asked for a few weeks to get himself organized with kind of everybody at the municipal center working on different schedules. He's got a lot going on, but he's also not doing as much as far as issuing specific permits for houses. He can't go into houses and do inspections and such. So I should be able to hear from him soon and see if we can get that going. And then I also got John Menti called yesterday. He had checked in with Pugner. He called me yesterday and he checked in with Pugner on 2 issues. One, with the heavy rains that we had, how did it look in the back with the whole tower issue and the water that used to back up there, et cetera. And Pugner reported that everything was moving really well. The water wasn't backing up. It was going where it was supposed to go. So that should be all set. And then John either texted or called back and said, what about the firing range? And he sent some photos from yesterday. With the wind-driven rain, I think there was probably a good amount of infiltration going on. So I can forward all that to each of you. Gives us an idea of where the infiltration was happening, probably in most of the same places that it did before. I want to make sure when this walkthrough happens, and Pugner did email last week and said, what's going on? Basically, that was it. So I told him we were working on it. I want to know when the walkthrough happens that they've got adequate lighting inside there, because if any of you have been in there, even when there's water in there, it's really difficult to see, even with a flashlight. I have a ton of extension cords and a bunch of halogen lights that I could clip on lights, whatever, to bring over if that's what they need. I will make sure that Downs tries to come prepared with something like that. If they don't, I'll bring stuff over and we'll set some lights up in there. As I said, we're going to have to do that. 5 people in the space, staying distance, wearing masks. Doesn't mean a few others of us can't be on site. We just have to make sure we don't have a quorum. So anything else, any questions on that? We have 1 invoice that we need to do. I got to find it.
Draperies Incorporated, Nancy.
Yeah, I know. And I have it somewhere and I'm finding it. Yeah. And I don't know as I had it. I put a bunch of stuff on a flash drive.
Hey, Nance, while you're looking for that, I just want to let everybody know, when I talked to Steve Pugner, he also checked the interior basement area, lower level of the building, where they originally had a few leaks when it was backing up. And there was nothing found. Everything was dry and no other issues in the building. So
Good. That's good to hear, John.
I know there was one area, I think it's that community room or training room or whatever it's called, the one that when you go into that's off to the right, there was some kind of drip or leak or something going on in there. And they did some kind of investigating and found supposedly a plumbing leak that was repaired. And then that water spot came back in the ceiling. And they were wondering if it was, because there's an exhaust fan near there, if there was some kind of wind-driven rain coming in that exhaust fan. So that's one, I just thought of that. It was something that I don't know as it was resolved, at least to my knowledge. And so we'll want to check with Pugner on that.
yeah, he was just saying to me about that. So.
Okay, so that may be something that did get resolved. I'm just making a note. So I do have the invoice from Draperies Inc. Screen sharing. I don't think I got it on my flash drive. Kathy, what I found, and you may want to check on this, when you sent the initial stuff out, you sent the agenda and the invoice for Draperies Inc.
Yeah.
And they went into the documents. So when I went on the town website and I went to the Zoom documents, those three were there.
Right.
And then when Geraldine put more documents in, so then initially the documents Geraldine sent were the invoices, and then there was a zip file with all the PCOs and the PCO logs. They were in there. Then when she put all the rest of the invoices and all the tracking logs and the budget and the report, that's all you could see. You couldn't see all the other documents. So I don't know if the document things become full. We're gonna have to check with Nick on that. So like if you went and looked at them now, you would probably see all the later stuff that Geraldine put in, but not the earlier stuff and not the early stuff that you put in.
Yeah, well, I had Nick's, like he originally was making it a big long list under, and I made him put it into a folder.
Okay.
So maybe in the transition of him putting it into the folder, something happened, because it was the way it was before. I said, we're going to do multiple meetings, so you need to have them in folders by meeting. So like I said, maybe in that transition, he did something with them. I don't know, but I can check into it.
Okay.
So.
All right. So I have this invoice from Draperies Inc. This is for the blinds and the cupola, the non-existent cupola. So I make a motion that we approve the invoice number 130N2170 from Draperies Inc. in the amount of $10,494.
I second it.
John Perna seconds. Any questions, difficulties, problems? Here it is. You can see it.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Well, no, we got to vote on this first. All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, we have to do one more thing.
Municipal Center.
Renovation, nothing going on with that right now, and I'll keep you updated on that. And I think we ought to go and have another meeting for another hour or two. What do you think?
Without me.
Just FYI.
Without me.
Yeah.
Wait,
With the next meeting, if you're going to end up doing one like a special meeting for executive session, I need to find out how we do that, being that it's a Zoom meeting, because you're originally inviting public in and then you're letting them leave, and I'm not sure exactly how that works. So that's something that we need to coordinate with Nick to find out how you do an executive session one.
Yep. So we'll start looking into that. And again, thinking caps as far as how we're going to proceed forward. We've got to have construction administration. We need Rizzo to step up and try to get their paperwork more in order, because we've heard both from not just Perkins, but from Geraldine, in that, they're spending extra time having to deal with Perkins or with Rizzo stuff. So now John can make his motion.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody have a wonderful night.
You too. Thank you, everybody.
night.
Good
Be
night.
safe, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Yep, night.